The grand ballroom was beautifully lit up for the celebration. The atmosphere at the Lin family banquet was wild and loud. Victoria, the stepmother, smiled widely and made a loud announcement. "My sweet Sasha is accepting Nate's grand proposal tonight." She swirled her dress, throwing a look of pure contempt at the crowd. Who cares about some $500 million contract or HC capital? None of that cheap corporate money matters to my Sasha. Arthur, the greedy family head, immediately chimed in with an arrogant laugh. Exactly. If Nate hadn't chosen this specific hotel venue, we wouldn't even dream of stepping foot in this garbage place. But their delusional bragging instantly furioused the regional director of Apex. Manager Lou's face turned black as he crossed his arms with a glare. "You fools really like digging your own graves, don't you? Look at the official records. Sasha is completely a nobody here." Arthur went wild with rage, pointing his finger right at Lou's face. "You might be the managing director of Apex Enterprises, but you will not spread lies about my family in this building." Victoria panicked, wrapping her arms tightly around Sasha to argue. "My Sasha has the looks, the brains, and the elite status. She literally locked down the massive contract with HC Capital today. She brought a financial miracle to Apex Enterprises, you idiot." Nate saw her true potential, and he chose her over everyone. Victoria stepped forward, screaming curses directly at manager Lou. "You are just a paid lapdog for the billionaire family, Lou. How dare you humiliate the future queen of the New York Empire? Just wait until Nate walks in. He'll fire you on the spot." Sasha, wearing her expensive dress, rolled her eyes with an arrogant smirk. "Manager Lou, I respect you only because of your executive title, but you need real certified evidence before you talk trash about me. You can't just claim I am not the billionaire's bride without proof." Justin, sitting right next to her, showed a disgusting, fawning smile. "Exactly. You are picking the wrong side to back today, Lou. Who else in this city is worthy of being the queen besides Sasha? You think Nate would pick Chloe, that broke girl from the country?" The comment sparked a wave of mocking laughter from the rival guests. Chloe, the target of their public humiliation, just stood aside quietly. Hearing the insults get worse, her eyes turned sharper than steel. "If you want to worship her, goaded by the desperate villains." Nate was working on his laptop when Chloe asked for a divorce. He refused instantly without a single second of hesitation. Chloe smiled, offering a deal to keep the marriage alive. She handed him a premium gift box as a thank you gesture. Nate opened it and frowned at the black lace lingerie inside. Chloe stayed cool, realizing her assistant Leo swapped the items. "That idiot is trying to prank us," she muttered with a sigh. Meanwhile, a bitter rival named Jen was lurking outside the estate. She brought a thug to launch a physical assault on Chloe, but before they could even reach the porch, guards threw them out. They rolled down the driveway into the mud looking pathetic. The next morning, Chloe walked into her corporate office. A security team was already boxing up her personal belongings. The director announced her immediate termination from the firm. As a violent argument broke out, Nate entered the floor. He revealed his identity as the supreme owner of the conglomerate. The staff froze, realizing Chloe was backed by the ultimate king. The investigation proved the director was taking corporate bribes. They even tracked the source of the viral defamation videos online. Nate's face turned lethal as he ordered immediate federal audits. "I will bankrupt your entire family network by midnight," he warned. As the pressure mounted, the corrupt executives turned on each other. Their little extortion scheme fell apart under the legal scrutiny. Chloe didn't back down when Jen tried to scream insults at her face. She lunged forward and delivered a powerful slap, silencing her. Nate took complete control of the corporate infrastructure. He promoted Chloe, making her status in the firm completely untouchable. The abusers could only shiver under his immense, terrifying authority. They realized their criminal tracking was going to send them to prison. Chloe had just survived a brutal physical encounter at the office. Her eyes were red as she reported the details to her husband. Sasha had posted fake escort rumors on the company's internal server. The stepmother Victoria even confessed to murdering Chloe's real mother. Nate felt a deep ache of sorrow and rage inside his chest. He pulled his weeping wife into a tight, protective embrace. "Lock down the HC Capital project within 7 days, honey," he said, "and I will announce to the world that you are the Queen of New York." They shared a passionate kiss as the gears of revenge began to turn. Over at the Apex headquarters, the rival faction was panicking. Sasha realized her viral defamation posts had been erased erased by main security. They assumed Chloe used her body to buy the favor of Nate's assistant. Suddenly, news broke that the Supreme Nate had arrived at the facility. He skipped his meeting with Sasha, heading straight to Chloe's office. Sasha went wild with jealousy, screaming threats down the hallway. "I'll have my fiancé destroy your career today, Chloe," she yelled. Chloe walked out of her room, completely ignoring the barking dogs. "Make sure you show up for Arthur's birthday gala," Chloe smiled, "because I am bringing a massive surprise for the family." The storyline cuts to the grand birthday gala at the Lynn mansion. Arthur and Victoria were bragging about their upcoming royal wedding. Just as they were toast to their future glory, Chloe entered the room. She handed Arthur a limited edition Patek Philippe watch worth $5 million. The jealous stepmother purposefully dropped the luxury item onto the floor. "This cheap piece of plastic isn't worth $5, Victoria sneered. She mocked Nate, calling him a broke driver who lived off his wife. But the reality check hit the family like a physical blow. An elite guest picked up the watch and checked the serial number. She pulled out the digital receipt, proving the $5 million cash payment. The faces of the Lynn family turned completely red from the embarrassment. Desperate to save her status, Sasha pulled out her smartphone. She played a hidden camera video of Chloe leaving a luxury apartment. An older man was walking right next to her down the steps. "She bought that watch with dirty money from this sugar daddy," Sasha yelled. The greedy father didn't even ask for an explanation before screaming. "You are a disgusting, uneducated brat, Chloe," Arthur roared. Nate stepped in front of his wife, letting out a dangerous laugh. "That older gentleman is a professional driver I hired," Nate said. "I paid him to keep my wife safe so she wouldn't have to take the subway." Sasha kept barking, calling Nate a delusional, broke loser. She had absolutely no clue she was looking at the master of the city. The real tactical devastation was about to drop on their heads. Chloe stood at the center of corporate authority. "Listen to me carefully, Chloe. Keep your mouth shut today. Stay in the corner and don't try to steal the spotlight from the VIPs." Chloe crossed her arms, letting out a sharp, confident laugh. "The HC Capital contract was won by my own proposal design, director. The glory belongs to me anyway. I don't need to steal anything." Cal was furious at her defiance, his voice turning into a shout. "You know nothing. The main goal of this gala is to announce the queen. The spotlight belongs to the bride, not a low-level worker like you." Chloe shrugged her shoulders, throwing out a final warning. "Fine, I promise I won't chase the cameras today, director. But if the spotlight decides to find me on its own, don't blame me." She turned on her heel and walked straight out of the office. She slipped into the private restroom to get away from the noise. She pulled out her phone, a sweet smile replacing her cold expression. She texted her husband, "Why didn't you tell me about the gala, Nate?" The screen lit up instantly. "I wanted to surprise my beautiful wife," Chloe pouted, typing back. "Well, it's mostly just stressful so far." Nate dropped the ultimate incentive. "I'll add $1 million bonus to your check." Seeing the number, Chloe's eyes turned into bright moons as she texted back. "Wow, thank you, honey. You are the absolute best husband ever," Nate teased her. "Just a text. I need a real thank you tonight." Chloe blushed, biting her lip as she typed her final reply. "Fine, I'll wear that silk lingerie you like when we get home." She locked her phone with a smile, preparing to walk back out, but a vicious plot was already moving right outside her door. Sasha had followed her into the corridor with a dark look. Seeing Chloe enter the restroom stall, she crept up to the main door. She pulled the heavy screwdriver out of her designer purse. With a quick, practiced twist, she jammed the lock from the outside. The heavy security door was completely sealed tight. Toe cut off all communications. Sasha targeted the signal box on the wall. She flipped the switches on the signal jammer until the red light flashed. She let out a twisted, silent laugh at her own success. She hung a maintenance "Do not enter" sign on the handle and walked away. Inside the stall, Chloe finally noticed the lack of air. She pulled the handle, but the heavy door wouldn't move an inch. "Is anyone out there? Open the door. I am locked in," she shouted. Fearing the worst, she pulled out her phone to dial Nate's number, but her heart dropped when she saw the network status on the screen. The signal bars were replaced by a sharp, blinking error cross. "What the hell? I had a full connection a minute ago," she panicked. No matter how hard she slammed on the wood, the hallway stayed dead silent. She was completely trapped inside the freezing, isolated room. But the Lin family's luck ran out the exact second that door closed. Over in the executive lounge, a much different drama was unfolding. Justin and the corrupt vice president Diana were on the floor. They were crawling on the marble, banging their heads in terror. "Have mercy, Lord Nate. We were completely fooled by Sasha," Justin wept. "She claimed she was your bride, so we followed her orders. Please treat me like garbage and just let me slide away, sir." Sasha stood in the corner, her luxury folder dropping to the carpet. She stared at the powerful man sitting in the center chair, her mind breaking. "Number, this is a mistake. You are the real Nate." Then Chloe. Before she could finish, Justin turned around like a rabid dog. "It is all her fault, boss. This witch lied to the entire board. We are completely innocent pawns in her sick game." Sasha shivered with rage, pointing her finger at her old allies. "You pathetic, backstabbing cowards. You were kissing my boots yesterday. Now you change your faces faster than a book page. You disgust me." Justin lost all his gentleman act, jumping up with a bloody snarl. "Shut your mouth, you toxic witch. You ruined our lives today. I am going to break your fake face right here," he roared, swinging his fist. "Drop the hands," a voice cut through the chaos like an iron blade. Nate, wearing a premium charcoal suit and a black tie, looked up. An aura of absolute world-crushing devastation filled the lounge. The single shout made Justin stumble back, his fist freezing in midair. Every executive in the room held their breath in total terror. Nate stood up, looking down at the crawling insects with lethal eyes. He took one powerful step forward, locking his gaze on Justin. "I am asking for the very last time," Nate whispered through his teeth. "Where the hell is my wife, Chloe?" But the villains had no clue that Chloe was running out of oxygen. The memory flashes back to the moments before the grand reveal. Sasha was strutting through the lobby, acting like she owned Apex. "Chloe's career is dead today," she sneered at the assistant. "Leo, let's see how long your little guard detail survives without a budget." Leo just kept his hands in his pockets, looking at her like a corpse. "We'll see whose name is on the tombstone by noon, lady," he chuckled. Just as Sasha prepared to scream another insult, Sal's phone rang. The director answered it, his face turning pale within seconds. The CEO's frantic voice roared through the speaker line. "Listen to me carefully. You idiot, the master of New York is here. Nate himself has just entered the Apex facility gates. I am sending his actual profile picture to your terminal right now. Open your blind eyes and make sure you don't offend the king. Your entire life and career depend on the next 60 seconds. Tao's neck was covered in sweat as he hung up the device. He trembled, promising to give the billionaire a 5-star welcome. Justin and Diana crowded around the laptop screen, their eyes wide. "Open it up, director. Let us see what the king looks like," Justin urged. Diana smiled, holding Sasha's arm with a sycophantic giggle. "A man with that much global wealth must be incredibly handsome." "Right, ma'am." Sasha's vanity reached an absolute peak as she adjusted her hair. "Who cares about his face? But I suppose I should take a look. We don't want any awkward mistakes when we meet in the ballroom," she smirked. The entire Lin faction leaned over the terminal, their heads together. They stared at the loading icons spinning on the Huawei display. Their pride and stupidity reached the absolute highest point, but their execution notice landed on the screen a second later. The loading bar completed, and the high-resolution photo flashed open. The moment director Cao saw the face of the man in the picture, he froze. His eyes dilated with an absolute blood-chilling horror. His skin turned into the color of a dead corpse as he started to shake. A wealthy heiress ends up driving a cheap ride Zan share car just to survive. She wears a neon ride Zan share vest and handles messy drunk clients every night. As soon as Chloe returns to New York, she runs into her evil stepsister, Sasha. Sasha blocks her path at the terminal, opening her mouth with a toxic smile. She immediately starts mocking her, bringing up all the old family pain. She takes pleasure in ripping open Chloe's deepest and most painful emotional scars. Years ago, right after Chloe's biological mother passed away in the ward, her toxic, moneyed and hungry father, Arthur, forced her to drop out and work. Arthur only cared about having a male heir and treated Chloe like a servant. Sasha was even worse, pushing Chloe into a corner for her own personal status. She forced Chloe into an arranged marriage with a comatose man just for profit. In Sasha's eyes, Chloe was just a disgraced nobody kicked out of the family mansion. She calls Chloe a cheap outcast who slept around with random street thugs. She stands stands there bragging that she took Chloe's place as the savior of the Nate family. Sasha claims she is the one who will marry the billionaire and rule the city. "I am going to be the official queen of Apex Enterprises, you loser," she sneers. But while Sasha is barking in the lobby, Chloe's oldest son Max steps up. The brave little boy blocks his mother, glaring at the mean woman. "My mommy is not a nobody. Don't you dare talk to her like that," the boy shouts. Nate, the cold and powerful CEO of Apex Enterprises, watches the drama unfold. He stands by his luxury security detail, his expression completely unreadable. He steps forward into the light and demands to know who these screaming people are. Max turns around, looks at Nate's handsome face, and sweetly calls him Daddy. The little voice echoes through the corridor, shocking everyone into silence. Sasha panics, screaming that the kid is a shameless liar, calling everyone his father. "He is a scammer trying to parasite off your massive wealth, Nate," she yells. Right then, Nate's executive assistant Ethan pulls out a certified legal document. He opens the secure file and reads the official biological DNA results out loud. The data proves the children are indeed Nate's actual biological sons. The sudden truth hits Sasha like a physical slap, leaving her pale as a corpse. In reality, on that dark and stormy night years ago, Chloe was drugged by her family. She was losing her consciousness and fled into a random hotel room to hide. She had absolutely no idea the man in the bed was a paralyzed, comatose Nate. In the chaos of that night, she cared for him and gave him a chance to live. She accidentally triggered his nervous system, waking the billionaire from his coma. Cut to the hospital corridor, where the other kids are whispering together. Mia and Eva hide behind the bench, looking at the heavy double doors. They wonder why their big brother Max has been inside the room for so long. Nate's elderly grandmother walks down the hallway, suffering from severe dementia. She looks confused, her memory trapped in the old days when Nate was a child. She mistakes little Eva for a young Nate, her eyes lighting up with love. She grabs the little girl's hand, telling her she is going to buy her some ice cream. The smart kids realize the old woman is completely lost and needs help. They decide to guide her toward the main security desk or a police officer. But while they are crossing the busy street outside, a crisis explodes. A speeding white sedan loses its brakes and spins completely out of control. To protect each other, the grandmother and the kids throw their bodies forward. They are struck by the impact and rush to the emergency room with injuries. Nate and Chloe both receive the emergency call from the hospital board. They drop everything and race to the private clinic at 100 miles an hour. Inside the ward, the confused grandmother screams, refusing to trust the doctors. She deadlocks her arms around Mia and Eva, refusing to let any stranger touch them. Worse, when the other two kids see Nate walk through the door, they gasp. They point their little fingers and call out the word daddy in front of everyone. Chloe bursts into the room, her heart racing as she checks her babies for scars. But the grandmother shoves her away, telling her to stay away from her family. "Don't you dare touch my precious grandchildren," the old woman screams. Chloe recognizes her face, her heart aching over how bad the dementia has gotten. Watching the extreme interaction, Nate's suspicion reaches a dangerous peak. He grabs Chloe's arm and traps her against the corner of the drywall. His eyes are bloodshot with rage as his shadow completely covers her. "Explain this to me right now, Chloe. Why do these kids have my face?" he growls. "Why the hell do they call me their father if they belong to someone else?" Faced with his aggressive questioning, Chloe feels a wave of pure panic. To protect her other babies from being seized by the cold, ruthless billionaire, she lies. She shoves his chest back and throws out a massive fabricated cover story. "They called you that by mistake. My actual boyfriend is Logan," she shouts. She even insults her own character, claiming she only wanted a New York visa. She yells that she married him for the money, and the kids have none of his blood. The words completely trigger Nate's legendary and explosive corporate temper. He slams his hand against the wall, choking her like an angry predator. He calls her a dishonest woman and demands she sign over custody for cash. I'm taking my oldest son back to the mansion, and you get nothing," he growls. Chloe struggles to breathe under his grip, tears streaming down her cheeks. The Nate family is too cruel. I cannot let him discover the full truth, she thinks. If he finds out about the others, he will lock them in a vault away from me. So she clenches her teeth, insisting the babies were born with a different man. Just as they are about to destroy each other, Logan bursts into the room screaming, "Chloe, stop fighting." Mia and Eva just got into a second medical emergency. The scene cuts to Chloe's small apartment where she is packing in a total frenzy. She throws shirts and shoes into a canvas duffel bag, preparing to run from the state. Little Mia climbs out from behind a heavy suitcase, her eyes full of big tears. "Mommy, why does Max get to stay with Daddy, but we have to hide?" she asks. "Is it because I'm just a little girl and he doesn't want me?" The innocent question stabs Chloe right in the center of her heart like a knife. She drops the clothes and pulls her daughter tight, weeping over her own fears. "I'm just so terrified they will take you away from me, my sweet angel," she cries. The smart little girl uses her tiny hands to wipe the tears from Chloe's face. "Don't cry, Mommy. I don't need a daddy anymore. I only want my mommy." The other children run into the room, wrapping their arms around her waist. They promise through their tears that they will never leave her side no matter what. But the billionaire's security grid has already locked down the entire block. Late that night, Chloe walks down the dim corridor holding a sleeping Max. The boy rests his head on her shoulder, murmuring how much he loves his mom. She steps off the elevator and suddenly freezes at the end of the hallway. Nate is standing right outside her door in a sharp suit, holding a luxury box. Max wakes up, spots him, and jumps down happily to run over with their puppy. The boy pets the dog and smiles up at the powerful corporate king. "The puppy wants you to pet him, Dad. You're going to be our daddy now," he says. Nate looks at the peeling wallpaper and the broken lights with pure disgust and rage. "Chloe, you dare make my biological son live in a complete dump like this," he barks. "You are raising a billionaire heir like a common, worthless street dog." Chloe snaps, her patience completely vanishing as she yells back at his arrogance. "What do you mean, like a dog? Have you never cared for a living pet before? I honestly can't tell if you are completely heartless or just a total psycho." Seeing his parents about to tear the hallway apart, Max pulls on Nate's coat. "Daddy, stop shouting. Don't forget the special gift for Mommy," the boy says. The gift was requested by their youngest son, Ben, who is still hiding overseas. Far away in a private villa, little Ben is drawing on his tablet and talking. "Dad, just give her the luxury box and your romance will skyrocket," the boy mumbles. "When I fly back to America, our family of 11 will finally be whole." Chloe takes the box inside her room, her face full of ice and emotional shields. "Don't think a fancy box will buy my forgiveness for what you did, Nate," she thinks. "And you will never steal my oldest son away from my arms." Meanwhile, on the 30th floor of the main Apex corporate tower, Nate stands by the massive glass window, his face looking completely dark. He clenches the official DNA lab report so hard his knuckles turn white. The legal certified paperwork confirms his genetic profile is an exact match. A wave of deep suspicion, anger, and betrayal consumes his entire mind. "You did steal my babies, Chloe. What is your real game here?" he growls into the dark. "The accident years ago, and everything you did. What kind of plot are you hiding?" The two parents, trapped under heavy lies and secrets, turn into absolute enemies. Chloe's morning is ruined by a random delivery containing Nate's half-naked photos. She takes the kids to his office to confront him, but Nate is genuinely confused. The argument turns into a deep interrogation about her true family lineage. Nate even forces his way into her apartment to demand answers about her past. As Chloe tries to load her luggage to flee the city with the babies, the tension peaks. Max steps into the living room, dropping a massive truth bomb about their birth. In a hide-and-seek standoff, Chloe screams that Nate is the actual biological father. The absolute truth shatters all of Nate's previous assumptions about her games. But the real malice is waiting for them at Sasha's Hide-and Society birthday gala. Sasha publicly humiliates Chloe on stage, demanding she crawl under her boots. Just as Chloe seems completely defeated in front of the city elites, she counters. She slams down the legal inheritance deed for the entire multi-billion-dollar estate. She reveals she is the sole legitimate heiress to the family's ancient wealth. She shows the arrogant crowd exactly who rules the financial market. The corporate boardroom turns into an absolute bloody war zone. Chloe tries to expose Sasha's financial crimes, but Nate treats her with coldness. He takes Sasha's side, striking Chloe across the face in front of the media cameras. He insults her background, completely ignoring their past nights together. But the one Zan-sided humiliation takes a massive, unexpected turn. Nate completes his secret sting operation through his elite agent, Ethan. He locks Sasha and the corrupt board members inside a secure hotel suite. He shows them an encrypted flash drive containing evidence that will bankrupt them. Chloe launches her final countered Zan strike against the family scammers. She rips off Sasha's fake smile and delivers a thunderous backhand slap. Then she drops the ultimate bombshell regarding the family legacy. The ancient jade token never belonged to Sasha's fraudulent bloodline. I am the little girl who saved your life in that car crash, Nate, she reveals. The truth stuns Nate into absolute silence as his entire reality flips upside down. Right then, his tactical units lead the children onto the ballroom floor. The emotional custody and romance battle hits the absolute highest peak. Can you honestly believe two gorgeous billionaire heirs are being bullied at school? Inside an elite New York private academy, Max and Leo are whispering together. Nate is our father, but he hurt mommy and our little sisters. Max says to his brother, we are never going to accept that bad man as our dad, Leo. Keep your guard up. Suddenly, Miss Kelly storms over to their desk, pointing her finger at them. She drags them to Director Vance's office, accusing them of being violent bullies. She demands the administration erase their grades and ruin their permanent records. Little Leo steps up like a man, defending his big brother with clear logic. I am the one who shoved Timmy. Leave my brother's academic files alone, he shouts. The teacher goes wild, furious that a supposedly poor kid dares to talk back to her. Director Vance doesn't even care about the actual facts or checking the cameras. The bully's parents just donated $2 million to the new school building fund. The administration has turned into complete lapdogs for corporate cash. They order Leo to call his mother and kneel down on the floor to apologize. They let little Timmy laugh and mock them in the center of the office floor. Just as the kids are completely trapped, a heavy shadow falls over the doorway. A powerful man in a dark trench coat walks in with an aura of supreme authority. It is Nate, the absolute ruler of Apex Enterprises himself. The clueless teacher and director keep mocking the single Zan mother family structure. They insult Chloe's ride Zan shared job, calling it low Zan class, trashy, and embarrassing. Kids from a broken home like this belong in a factory line gluing shoes, they sneer. Max steps forward, shouting that their mommy already fixed their permanent school files. We are staying in New York and we are never going back to the countryside. Right then, Timmy's wealthy parents, Thomas and Fiona, strut into the office room. Fiona, wearing an expensive white mink fur coat, greets the teacher arrogantly. Thomas hears his son was touched and immediately charges forward at Nate. He tries to shove the stranger out of his way without even looking at his face. But he has absolutely no idea he just attacked a man who can destroy his life. Nate's eyes turn lethal as he locks his grip around Thomas's right wrist. With a brutal tactical move, he slams the wealthy tycoon onto the floorboards. He looks down at the screaming man with pure, unchallenged dominance. I give you exactly 10 minutes to kneel and beg my sons for mercy, Nate says coldly. Thomas and his wife keep screaming, calling Nate a fake copycat and a fraud. Thomas claims he is a senior executive at Apex earning millions a year. I can crush a low Zan level worker like you with one phone call, you loser, he yells. While they are screaming, Nate drops to one knee before his two boys. He brushes their hair gently, his voice full of deep warmth and fatherly regret. Leo, Sam, your mother raised you with perfect honor, he tells them softly. A man never kneels for human garbage. Remember this rule today. If nobody touches us, we stay peaceful. If they They strike. We eliminate them completely. Max stares at the powerful billionaire defending them, his little eyes wide. Daddy, are you really the supreme head of Apex Enterprises? The boy asks. Nate gives him a warm, reassuring smile and gives a solid nod. The director and the teacher instantly turn white, sweating through their expensive shirts. They realize the poor father they insulted is the ultimate master of the city. Suddenly, Thomas's smartphone rings with an emergency corporate alert. The executive VP, Mr. Evans, delivers the freezing legal notice on the line. You used the Apex name for extortion and ruined our public market standing. You are terminated immediately, and we are suing you for $300 million. Hearing the astronomical figure, Fiona collapses onto the carpet like wet clay. Thomas completely breaks down, weeping as his entire career vanishes into thin air. The toxic couple starts slapping their own faces, begging Nate for mercy. Miss Kelly shivers, trying to stammer an apology to the little children. Max looks up at Nate, holding his strong hand with a brilliant idea. Dad, can we make Timmy's parents do Mommy's rides and share shifts instead? The boy asks. Mommy works so hard alone, and driving all night is completely exhausting. Hearing his son's words, Nate feels a sharp stab of pure grief and guilt in his chest. The school principal bursts through the double doors with his own tactical security. Miss Kelly tries to lie to save her job, but the principal cuts her off instantly. He delivers a brutal backhand slap across her face, telling her to shut her mouth. Director Vance drops his badge, signs his resignation, and bows past his waist to Nate. He drags the crying teacher out of the building to escape the billionaire's wrath. The human garbage is cleared out, and the boys look at their father's handsome face. Are you really our real dad? Ben looks exactly like you in his pictures. They smile. Nate pulls his sons into his chest, tears of deep regret in his eyes. He zonrols them, apologizing for being late and letting them face the cold world alone. Max hugs his neck tightly, asking if he will separate them from Mommy's house. Nate gives them an Iron Zan-clad promise that the family stays together forever. Looking at his brilliant boys, Nate feels a deep tenderness for Chloe's sacrifice. The woman survived in the city shadows alone to protect his royal bloodline. His face turns serious as he pulls out his secure satellite smartphone. Bring Chloe to my office right now. Do not delay a single second, he orders his men. The multi-10-year separation is over, and the real family reunion has officially begun. Who would have thought a supreme CEO doesn't even know his own biological kid count? Nate traps Chloe on the leather couch, his teeth clenched in total fury. You have 6 children, don't you, Chloe? Stop lying to my face, he demands. Chloe denies it to the death, and Nate silences her with a dominant, passionate kiss. He has absolutely no clue the single mother he looks down on is a shadow tycoon. The second she signed the legal papers, she took over Genesis Holdings. To audit the infrastructure, she hid her multi-Zan billion-dollar Heiress title from the press. She started working as an entry Zan-level designer at the firm's local branch. The senior board members who loved her mother gave her unlimited financial access. They handed her black cards and keys to a massive Upper East Side mansion. Meanwhile, Nate receives the final certified DNA lab results from the clinic. The legal paperwork confirms the first 3 boys belong to the Nate family line. The Nate estate falls into total chaos as the old grandmother panics in the lounge. She throws a massive tantrum because she hasn't met her great Zan grandchildren yet. To soothe her, Nate forces Chloe into a $1 billion Zan cohabitation contract. You move into my mansion for 90 days to satisfy my family, he commands her, but he drops a cruel restriction, warning her about the other 3 babies. Those other 3 kids are not allowed inside my house under any condition, he snarls. Nate has absolutely no idea his own grandmother is a hardcore Chloe supporter. The old woman learns Chloe had the babies and is 10 times better than Vivian. She schedules a massive 100 Zan Family Hide Zan Society gala for tonight's event. She prepares to announce Chloe as the official bride of the entire corporate empire. Inside the limo, no. Chloe stays cool but runs the escape coordinates in her mind. Announce me. I need to gather my 6 babies and flee the country tonight, she thinks. At the estate, the grandmother interrogates her about her past lifestyle. Our heroine puts on an Oscar-Zan-winning performance for the old woman's sympathy. She claims the other 3 kids were orphans left by a late college friend. She was scammed out of her body and money by a toxic bastard, ma'am, Chloe cries. And then God struck that terrible man down with a bolt of lightning. Nate's face turns green as he listens to her mock his own actions indirectly. But under his grandmother's strict gaze, he has to agree. Yes, good riddance, he grunts. The grandmother weeps, ordering all 6 children brought to the mansion bedrooms. They will all call Nate their father from now on. I won't hear a no, she declares. Nate cannot say a single word, forced to swallow the bitter tactical loss. With the mansion drama settled, Chloe reports to Genesis Holdings the next morning, but in the lobby, she overhears her toxic co-workers spreading rumors by the cooler. They claim she smells poor and slept with an old manager to get the position. Right then, the main villain of the firm, Vivian, makes her grand entrance. Relying on her distant ties to the Nate family, she brags to the starstruck staff. She claims she and Nate are childhood sweethearts destined for a royal marriage. Inside the studio, the supervisor tries to buy Vivian's favor by stepping on Chloe. She orders the new designer, Chloe, to fetch hot coffee and clean up the desk. 设计部的基层工作本是掩护，但罗斯却直接正面拒绝了这种羞辱。Chloe shoots back instantly. I am a professional designer, not your maid, she says. Vivian scoffs, mocking Chloe's cheap clothes and lifestyle choices openly. You won't even survive your probation week in this building, you loser, she sneers. But the small Zan-minded corporate bullies have no clue who they just targeted. While the supervisor is laughing, the executive directors storm the floor. They scream at the supervisor, their faces turning red with corporate panic. Are you insane? That new girl is backed by the Supreme CEO, Nate, they yell. Even our corporate president, Mr. Sankt Miller, ordered her treated like a queen. The supervisor shivers, her legs turning to water as cold sweat drops from her neck. But the funniest joke is Vivian and her completely bankrupt father's plan. The old man assumes the true heiress of Genesis is dead and gone forever. He tells Vivian to use her looks to seduce the remaining corporate executives. He wants to steal the entire infrastructure under their family name by fraud. Suddenly, Vivian gets an alert about the massive Nate family gala tonight. The delusional girl immediately invents a romantic fantasy in her head. Nate threw this gala to celebrate my return to America, she tells her dad proudly. He is going to propose and announce our love to the entire world tonight. The stage is set, and the lines of wealth and deception are permanently drawn. The hidden heiress is ready, and the fake white moonlight is dreaming of glory. Tonight's grand gala is going to be an absolute historic execution of their pride. 2 gorgeous billionaire heirs are being bullied at school. The staff treats them like fatherless kids from the countryside. They claim the boys don't have the status to breathe the same air. Inside an elite New York private academy, Max and Leo are whispering together. Max looks at his little brother and speaks with serious determination. Nate is our father, but he hurt mommy and our sisters. We are never going to accept that bad man as our dad Leo. We have to protect mommy ourselves and never give in to his money. Suddenly, Miss Kelly storms over to their desk, slamming her book down. She points her long finger at them, her face twisted with pure snobbery. She drags them straight to Director Vance's office to file a complaint. She accuses them of being violent bullies who attack other students. She claims they have been terrorizing their classmates on purpose. These kids have a history of fighting on the playground, she lies. She demands the administration erase their grades and ruin their records. She wants a permanent suspension stamped on their academic files. Little Leo steps up like a man, defending his big brother with a shout. I am the one who shoved Timmy. Leave my brother's files alone. He didn't touch anyone. Timmy was throwing dirt at us first. The teacher goes wild, furious that a poor kid dares to talk back. Director Vance doesn't even care about checking the security cameras. His face shifts completely when he hears the name of the other boy. Timmy's parents just donated $2 million to the new building fund. The administration has turned into complete lapdogs for corporate cash. Vance stands up, ordering Leo to call his mother immediately. Get her down here right now to face the consequences, he barks. They let little Timmy laugh and mock them in the center of the office. They demand the boys get on their knees to apologize for the drama. Kneel down right now or you are banned from New York schools, they threaten. Just as the kids are completely trapped, a heavy shadow falls over the room. The temperature drops to 0 as the office door is slowly pushed open. A man in a dark trench coat walks in with an aura of pure authority. It is Nate, the supreme boss of Apex Enterprises himself. The clueless teacher and director keep mocking the single mother family. They claim children from broken homes always lack basic discipline. They insult Chloe's rideshare job, calling it low class and embarrassing. Kids from a home like this only belong in a factory line making shoes. They sneer. Max steps forward, shouting that their mommy already fixed their files. We are staying in New York, and we are never going back to the countryside. Our mommy is a brilliant woman, and she works harder than any of you. Right then, Timmy's wealthy parents, Thomas and Fiona, strut into the room. Fiona, wearing an expensive white fur coat, greets the teacher arrogantly. Thomas hears his son was touched and immediately charges forward at Nate. He tries to push the stranger out of his way without even looking. "Get out of my face, you broke driver," Thomas shouts at the top of his lungs, but he has absolutely no idea he just attacked a man who can destroy his life. Nate's eyes turn lethal as he locks his grip around Thomas's wrist. With a brutal martial arts move, he slams the wealthy tycoon onto the floorboards. The wood cracks underneath the impact as Thomas screams in intense pain. Nate looks down at the screaming man with pure, unchallenged dominance. "I give you exactly 10 minutes to kneel and beg my sons for mercy," Nate says. "If you are still standing by then, I will liquidate your entire world." Thomas and his wife keep screaming, calling Nate a fake copycat and a fraud. Thomas claims he is a senior executive at Apex earning millions a year. "I can crush a low-level worker like you with one phone call to corporate, you loser," he yells. While they are screaming, Nate drops to one knee before his two boys. He brushes their hair gently, his voice full of deep warmth and regret. "Leo, Sam, your mother raised you with perfect honor," he tells them softly. "A man never kneels for human garbage. Remember this rule today. If nobody touches us, we stay peaceful. If they strike, we eliminate them completely." Max stares at the powerful billionaire defending them, his little eyes wide. "Daddy, are you really the supreme head of Apex Enterprises?" The boy asks. Nate looks at his boys with a proud smile and gives a solid nod. "Yes, son, and nobody is ever going to look down on you again," he promises. The director and the teacher instantly turn white, sweating through their clothes. They realize the poor father they insulted is the ultimate master of the city. Suddenly, Thomas's smartphone rings with an emergency corporate alert. The executive VP, Mr. Evans, delivers the freezing legal notice on the line. "You used the Apex name for extortion and ruined our public market standing. You are terminated immediately, and we are suing you for $300 million. Hearing the astronomical figure, Fiona collapses onto the carpet like wet clay. Thomas completely breaks down, weeping as his entire career vanishes into thin air. The toxic couple starts slapping their own faces, begging Nate for mercy. They crawl over the carpet, trying to touch the edge of his expensive leather boots. Miss Kelly shivers, trying to stammer an apology to the little children. Max looks up at Nate, holding his strong hand with a brilliant idea. "Dad, can we make Timmy's parents do Mommy's rideshare shifts instead?" The boy asks. Mommy works so hard alone, and driving all night is completely exhausting. Hearing his son's words, Nate feels a sharp stab of pure grief and guilt in his chest. The school principal bursts through the double doors with his own security. Miss Kelly tries to lie to save her job, but the principal cuts her off instantly. He delivers a brutal backhand slap across her face, telling her to shut her mouth. Director Vance drops his badge, signs his resignation, and bows past his waist to Nate. He begs for Nate's corporate mercy, promising to clean out the entire administration. He drags the crying teacher out of the building to escape the billionaire's wrath. The human garbage is cleared out, and the boys look at their father's handsome face. "Are you really our real dad? Ben looks exactly like you in his pictures," they smile. Nate pulls his sons into his chest, tears of deep regret in his eyes. He holds them tight, apologizing for being late and letting them face the cold world alone. Max hugs his neck tightly, asking if he will separate them from Mommy's house. "If you take us away by force, you are not a good daddy," the boy whispers. Nate gives them an ironclad promise that the family stays together forever. "I am going to bring your mommy home, and we will be whole," he vows, looking at his brilliant boys. Nate feels a deep tenderness for Chloe's sacrifice. The woman survived in the city shadows alone to protect his royal bloodline. His face turns serious as he pulls out his secure satellite smartphone. "Bring Chloe to my office right now. Do not delay a single second," he orders his men. The multi-year separation is over, and the real family reunion has officially begun. The billionaire elite world is complicated, and dark plots are everywhere. Nate discovers that he has been completely played by the manipulative Vivian. The outcast girl Chloe is the true heiress his family has been hunting for years. At the grand gala of Genesis Holdings, Vivian tries to force her way inside, but her fake status is completely crushed right at the front gates by security. Chloe arrives in a stunning gown and instantly becomes the center of attention. Nate's grandmother steps onto the stage, making a historic public announcement. "Chloe is the mother of our 3 heirs and the future queen of this empire." The confession throws the high society crowd into absolute unbridled chaos. But the sudden announcement puts a massive target right on Chloe's back. Behind the scenes, the relationship between the 2 parents begins to shift. Inside the private ward, Nate drops his cold corporate expression. He offers Chloe a sincere and deep apology for the pain of the past. He admits he uncovered Vivian's dirty secrets and feels her suffering. He promises to protect her, and the frozen walls between them begin to melt. But the remaining villains refuse to let the family live in peace. The psychotic Frank kidnaps Chloe, locking her inside a dark basement room. He tries to use the most disgusting extortion tools to ruin her life. Faced with his threats, Chloe stands her ground like a total queen. "You can drag me to hell, Frank, but you will never get the shares," she spits. Just as the blade drops, Nate crashes through the heavy steel doors. He beats the kidnapper senseless, unleashing full tactical devastation. Chloe uses her raw endurance to survive the dangerous boardroom trap. Nate brings her back to the main estate, caring for her injuries personally. Under the quiet night sky, the 2 finally share their true feelings. "I don't hate your presence anymore, Nate," she whispers softly. The simple phrase marks the beginning of their beautiful new chapter. But with rival family plots and Frank's revenge, the war is far from over. Chloe's journey is still full of heavy corporate traps and challenges. She carries her bags to Lucas's estate, only to face immediate rejection. The elite guards treat her like a low-class courier who doesn't belong. But in this game of billionaire power, she is no longer a weak target. In the dark, Nate is currently organizing a massive financial counterstrike. He has acquired the definitive data that can bankrupt the entire rival board. At the elite gala, Nate makes a dominant, thunderous entrance. He forces the toxic Sasha to ingest a paralytic drug, locking her in a cell. He announces Chloe's sovereign position in front of the city's billionaires. The once arrogant heiresses look like insects under his lines of immense authority. The ultimate truth regarding the legacy is finally unlocked for the public. Chloe is the true successor to Genesis, and her marriage to Nate is official. But the dark forces decide to take one final desperate gamble. Sasha and her aunt plot to kidnap Nate while he is isolated. They want to use illegal chemical drugs to control his mind and fortune. The grand war for revenge, legacy, and family is reaching a boiling point. Inside the luxury boardroom of Genesis Holdings, the layout is tense. Nate slides the equity contract over, demanding Chloe's signature. "Sign the shares over or your life terminates in this room," he threatens, to destroy her standing. Vivian plays a fabricated deepfake video file. The footage shows a fake scandal of Chloe leaving an older man's room. Just as the press prepares to blast the news to the national networks, it flips. A 6-year-old tech genius named Toby patches into the main display screens. He proves the entire video file is a cheap Photoshop digital fraud. Vivian's plot is exposed to the media, ruining her own career forever. Losing her mind, Vivian launches a physical assault on Chloe's assistant, Logan. The confrontation turns violent, and Logan gets injured protecting the queen. He is rushed to the emergency room, under heavy guard escort. Looking at her injured friend in the clinic bed, Chloe is deeply moved. Nate steps into the hospital corridor, dropping his cold shields for good. He wraps his arms around Chloe, locking his lips onto hers in a passionate kiss. He declares his sovereign love for her in front of the entire medical staff. "My love is pure, Chloe, and you are my only queen," he whispers softly. Their hearts are finally united, and Vivian's threats mean nothing now. Chloe is no longer the defenseless girl they can push into the mud. Her glorious billionaire future with her 6 babies has officially begun. Rose wakes up to find herself trapped inside a dark fiction novel. She is stuck as a doomed side character destined to die by a velvet rope, but she refuses to let her life end in total tragedy a second time. Watching the digital clock tick down on her screen, she makes a sharp choice. I just need to break this toxic engagement to change my entire destiny. Inside the New York mayor's luxury mansion, her father is completely ice cold. Her face is heavily ruined by raw poison and covered in deep, terrifying scars. The corrupted old man calls her a total disgrace to the family's elite reputation. Take your useless maid and get the hell out to our countryside farm right now. Rose is kicked out of the estate directly into the chaotic city market. Some local scammers frame her, claiming she is part of their shoplifting ring. Just as a violent street fight is about to break out, Julian appears. Julian is the mayor's wealthy son and her incredibly arrogant former fiancé. Seeing her scarred, ruined face, the young politician shows absolutely zero pity. He looks at her with pure disgust, like she is a subhuman monster from the mud. But Rose uses her modern-day science knowledge to keep her mind sharp. She spots the hidden flaws in the scammer's little sleight hand game. She exposes their financial tricks on the spot, clearing her own name to the crowd. The brilliant tactical move completely changes Julian's view of her brains. To survive in this ancient era, Rose decides to build a corporate business. She pitches a massive brewery plan to a local billionaire named Ethan. Her expert college knowledge of biofermentation completely shocks his team. They started as temporary partners, but Ethan now deeply respects her. Her grand business empire has officially crossed the starting line. Ethan asks Rose how to protect their secret recipes from rival spies. Rose suggests building a completely isolated, high-security R&D facility. We run strict background checks and raise the hiring bar, she says. Ethan is amazed by her brilliant, modern corporate management skills. Rose laughs, boasting she was the top science student back in college. She locks down a $5,000 angel investment check from him. She secures 20% of the year-end profits in the legal contract. But instead of spending it on luxury clothes, she invests everything into cotton fields. Suddenly, the mayor's arrogant adopted daughter, Sasha, storms the farm. Sasha acts incredibly high and mighty, demanding Rose kneel in the dirt to greet her. Rose stands her ground like a true queen, and her maid talks back without fear. Sasha snaps, but Rose counterattacks and slaps her lead assistant hard. Rose exposes Sasha as a pathetic puppet used by the mayor for status. Faced with total exposure, Sasha drops the stolen land deeds and flees. Holding the deeds, Rose uncovers a hidden ledger of black money. Later, the business team stops at a crowded highway inn for the night. A local mafia boss tries to steal their room, showing off his massive wealth. Rose spots a deep crack in his expensive jade ring, Mr. Sterling's ring. That broken ring brings a deadly financial curse, she tells him smoothly. The psychological trick breaks his confidence, saving her money and her room. She takes full control of the entire local situation from behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the mayor's son Julian is traveling through the state in secret. He hits a massive, unexpected roadblock inside a shady downtown motel. 2 clumsy street thieves drug his drink and steal his family gold medal. Realizing he is a top politician, they panic and try to hide the body. They stuff the unconscious Julian into a freezing, filthy pickle barrel. Next door, Ethan is also affected by the dirty, cheap motel food. Julian wakes up in the barrel, goes wild, and sets the motel room on fire. But Ethan and Rose were completely sober and awake the entire time. They watched his little tantrum from the balcony with a mocking smirk. They throw a heavy burlap sack right over Julian's head in the hallway. They scream about catching a black market manager to cover their tracks. They beat the corrupt politician senseless, throwing punches in the dark. They tie him up for the local sheriffs, yelling that the suspects fled. Rose notes that Julian is a toxic leader who ruins innocent lives. Cut to the city hall, where a bruised Julian is screaming at Arthur. He demands the mayor destroy Ethan's brewery factory immediately. The mayor sighs, admitting their secret poisoning plot completely failed. Their hired thugs confessed under pressure and were shipped to federal lockup. Worse, Ethan has the president's full personal backing on the lawsuit. Julian is terrified the corruption story will reach the White House press. The mayor deploys the city tax division to raid Ethan's modern facility. He claims the business owes 10 days of back taxes to the local government. The mayor plays the good guy, offering to drop the emergency tax audit. Just drop the poisoning case, and we can make this problem go away. Ethan looks the corrupt mayor dead in the eye and rejects the dirty bribe. Right then, Rose enters the executive boardroom wearing a dark cloak. She slams a thick, confidential folder onto the mayor's mahogany desk. It is the secret, certified ledger of his multi-million-dollar bribery network. The mayor starts sweating bullets, his face turning pale as a corpse. Rose drops her conditions with absolute cold-blooded authority. First, you leave this brewery alone for the rest of your life. Second, you pay us $20,000 cash for the trouble. The mayor clenches his teeth and signs the corporate check in total defeat. With the legal crisis cleared, Rose splits the cash profit with Ethan. They celebrate by eating her brand new, gourmet spicy chicken recipes. Rose announces her next grand business plan to the entire team. We are building the biggest commercial food court in New York City. Meanwhile, the mayor promises Julian he can fix the corporate situation. But Ethan already sees right through his desperate little political plot. The mayor wants to seize Ethan's assets to cover his massive debts. Then he plans to stage a fake rescue to make Julian look good to the public. The deep state political swamp is deeper than anyone can imagine. Back at the Highway Motel, the clumsy thief with the red hat returns. He creeps upstairs with a survival knife, trying to rob the guest rooms. But karma hits him like a freight train before he even reaches the door. He accidentally breathes in his own toxic knockout gas and passes out. He rolls down the entire flight of wooden stairs, looking completely ridiculous. Rose's private cotton fields hit a massive, record-breaking harvest. She expects a huge return on investment, but a dangerous trap is already set. A greedy local debt collector arrives, demanding insane interest rates by force. Even Ethan seems to want sovereign control over the trade distribution. Suddenly, a corrupt military supply unit raids the farmhouse gates. They demand to seize the entire cotton crop using Julian's political name. The debt collector and the corrupt officer push Rose into a tight corner. They threaten her with high treason charges for delaying emergency army supplies. But Rose is not a weak, submissive target for their extortion games. She bypasses their local authority with a brilliant public legal move. She signs a public charity donation document in front of the town crowd. The supply unit instantly loses their legal right to seize the goods. She saves the local farmers' hard work and ruins the military plot. Rose shows zero fear, flashing the official White House donation papers. She gave the entire harvest to the frontline federal troops for free. The charity move completely ruins Julian's secret black market trade. Julian goes wild with rage, screaming at the mayor for immediate answers. The heartless mayor cuts all ties with Rose to protect his own political skin. She is just a scarred outcast. She means absolutely nothing to me. He lies. Julian sends professional shadow assassins to eliminate Rose at midnight. Just as the steel blades drop, Ethan's top bodyguard Frank steps in. Frank takes down the killers but gets cut by a deeply poisoned dagger. Rose stays perfectly calm and focused under the extreme medical pressure. She uses high-proof alcohol to sterilize a heavy hunting knife. She cuts the poisoned, black flesh right out of Frank's shoulder. Her raw courage and modern medical skill completely stun the billionaire Ethan, but the desperate mayor decides to finish the execution himself with his guards. He surrounds the entire farmhouse, throwing down a rope, wine, and a knife. A daughter must obey her father's execution order. The old man sneers. Rose fights back with fury, but the heavy guards slam her onto the dirt. They hold her down on the ground, beating her to force her to drink the poison. Right at the final second of survival, Ethan crashes through the wooden gates. He holds up a high-level executive order signed by the president himself. The president demands to see this young lady in Washington immediately. The words freeze the mayor's heart, stopping the execution on the spot. Ethan had already reported her massive cotton donation to the Capitol. He exposed the local supply unit, its history of bribery and fraud. The president was thrilled by her extreme patriotism and ordered a meeting. Ethan knows Julian still has immense rogue power in the local state. He tells Rose to stay hidden and safe until they reach the capital city. Faced with her father's parting threats, Rose just lets out a cold smile. She steps onto the secure transport vehicle heading straight to New York. Inside the White House briefing room, Rose stands covered in blood and dirt. Faced with the president's personal questions, she drops her silence. She removes her travel hat, exposing her scarred face to the media cameras. She delivers a heartbreaking, certified confession against the mayor's history. He poisoned my face so Julian would break our official engagement. He threw me into the streets so his adopted daughter could take my place. And tonight, he tried to murder his own child to bury the financial evidence. The president stands up from his desk in absolute shock and executive fury. He is deeply moved by her sacrifice and her loyalty to the federal nation. He fires the corrupt mayor on the spot, stripping him of all public office. He promotes Rose to chief senior advisor of the national administration. An abandoned farm girl uses her modern brains to completely crush the elite. She steps really gifted. He offered to make an exception and take her as his apprentice. He promised to make the little girl the most powerful figure. Chloe's brother, Luke, quickly chimed in with deep flattery. He bragged that with Silas as their backing, the family would skyrocket. But the smart little Lily pushed her mother's hand away. She cried, refusing the apprenticeship, and screamed for her dad. Right then, Chloe's husband, Austin, rushed through the doors. But instead of a warm welcome, his mother, in-law Victoria, screamed at him. She pointed a finger at his face, calling him a useless loser. She slammed him for even thinking about taking Lily away. Luke then threw a divorce agreement aggressively onto the table. He shouted arrogantly, acting like he was giving a massive handout. He said if Austin signed, they would give him $5 million. That is enough for a low-class peasant like you to retire, he sneered. Austin looked at the greedy, toxic family, his eyes full of disappointment. He turned to the woman he shared a bed with for years. He asked her if she really wanted a divorce just to climb into high society. Chloe turned her head away coldly, refusing to even look at him. She stated proudly that Austin was just a broke night school teacher. She said he couldn't keep up with her multi-billion-dollar corporate goals. We simply don't belong to the same social class anymore, she sneered. Austin pointed out with bitter sorrow that she only cared about money. She completely forgot how he worked night shifts for pennies. He was the one who raised little Lily with all his heart, but Chloe was completely blinded by the luxury lifestyle. She mocked Austin coldly, saying a paid nanny could do his chores. Lily needs a father she can be proud of, not a house husband, she spat. The family's new wealthy ally, Vance, cut in impatiently. He told Chloe to stop wasting her breath on this peasant. He reminded her they had to sign a multi-billion-dollar deal tonight. The contract was with the massive White Dragon Holdings. Faced with their pressure and the threat of losing his daughter, Austin let go. He walked up to the table and picked up the pen smoothly, but as he signed his name, he dropped one icy condition. I don't want a single cent of your money, but Lily comes with me. Victoria went completely ballistic, ripping Lily away with a scream. She yelled that Chloe was about to marry into a billionaire family. If the girl stays with a low-class loser, she'll starve on crumbs, she barked. Vance's face turned dark and he ordered his guards to step in. He told them to break Austin's legs and throw him out into the street. But the Lynn family and Vance had absolutely no idea who they were dealing with. They had no clue this night Zan's school teacher in an old coat was a god. The timeline shifts to earlier that day at the night school in Boston. Austin was running late because his tires had been slashed. He opened the classroom door, seeing rows of empty seats. He shook his head, sighing that the student skipped the first class. But right as he pulled out his phone to make a call, the global balance of power completely turned upside down. Inside the grand, supreme palace of ultimate authority, the world's class female General Scarlet sat high on the throne. The absolute rulers of multiple nations were kneeling before her feet. Even the fierce General Vance could only stand respectfully aside. The entire crowd bowed to the ground, shouting, "All hail the master." They handed over their official surrender documents with trembling hands. Deep inside a misty forest under the moonlight, the absolute top Grandmaster, Julian, stood with his eyes closed. 4 masked elite killers surrounded him, launching a fatal attack. Julian calmly formed a massive wave of blue energy around his body. With just a tiny fraction of his aura, he deflected the strike. The 4 top-tier assassins spit blood and crashed onto the grass. Their leader turned pale with terror, screaming that his power was God-like. Inside the VIP boardroom of the Vanguard Group, the nation's richest tycoon, Ethan, leaned over the table coldly. He delivered an absolute command to the executives in front of him. "Accepting my hostile takeover is your only shot at survival." The CEO of the rival firm poured him tea, begging humbly for a lifeline. And inside the ancient Haidzan Security Medical Temple, the world's supreme miracle doctor Rose was sipping her tea. Her assistant, Blair, approached respectfully with a black card. She reported that the chairman of the world's 3rd largest fund offered $10 billion just for a private medical visit. The tycoon was currently kneeling outside the gates, begging for an hour. The warlord, the tycoon, the grandmaster, and the miracle doctor, these 4 individuals stood at the absolute peak of global power. To the public, each of them was a living god in their field, but when their phones vibrated on the table at the exact same second, and the screen displayed an incoming call from Teacher Austin, these 4 supreme rulers instantly lost their cold, majestic looks. Their faces turned pale with absolute reverence and deep excitement. They answered the call, shouting in perfect humble unison, "Teacher." The Yixiao Laoshi Austin, who was treated like absolute garbage by the Lins, was actually the supreme mentor to these 4 global legends. Austin told them calmly on the phone to do self-dance study tonight. Then the doors to his small office were gently pushed open. Scarlet, Ethan, Julian, and Blair, the masters of the world, walked in with their heads lowered like misbehaving children. Austin turned around, tapping the podium with a stern look. "Late on the very first day. Do you even respect my class anymore? You guys are hands down the worst class I have ever taught." Faced with his lecture, the fierce female General Scarlet spoke up quickly. She reported humbly that she had mastered his Dragon Zan taming moves. "Nobody under the sun can challenge me except you, Master," she said. Austin cut her off coldly, telling her to stop bragging about basic stuff. "Those are just minor self-defense moves for working out," he noted. The billionaire tycoon Ethan also stepped forward to claim credit. He said his massive financial success was all thanks to Austin's guidance. But Austin exposed his background without a single shred of mercy. "You used to run a cheap street stand downtown, Ethan," Austin chuckled. "You weren't this loud back then. Stay humble and focus on your work." The multi-Zan trillionaire tycoon started sweating bullets under the lecture. He shrank his neck, lowering his head, too ashamed to look up. The miracle Dr. Rose nervously crossed her hands by her side. Austin flat out told her he only taught her basic anatomy common sense because she had a weak body and needed to stay healthy. While Austin was lecturing the world's elite about their final tests, his smartphone began to shake and roar on the desk again. He frowned slightly, sliding the screen to answer the call. His ex-gen wife Chloe's arrogant, commanding voice blasted through the line. "Austin, where the hell are you? Get your ass back here right now. We are going to settle the final details of this divorce paperwork." Her spiteful, toxic voice echoed clearly through the silent room. In a split second, the atmosphere inside the classroom turned lethal. The faces of Scarlet, Ethan, Julian, and Rose turned pitch black. A cold old-world Zan-ending killing intent erupted from their eyes. The arrogant Lin family had absolutely no clue what they were doing. They were screaming at the supreme ruler who sits above the world. The combined fury of his 4 students would destroy them. They were destined to grind the entire Lin family into dust. The tension reached a boiling point inside the lavish investment gala. Austin and Scarlett tried to lead little Lily out of the room, but the wealthy Lin family deployed their security to block the path. Chloe's parents sneered, mocking Austin's faded, cheap jacket. "You can't even afford her private academy tuition. Loser," they laughed. "What right do you have to talk about fatherly love in this building?" To the elite crowd, Austin was just a broke joke looking for attention. They claimed a Night Zan school teacher didn't belong at a High Zan End gala. Just as Vance ordered his thugs to break Austin's legs, Governor Sterling walked into the ballroom, wearing full medals. He caught sight of the dark token clutched tightly in Austin's hand. His arrogant look instantly shattered into pure paralyzing terror. In front of the shocked crowd, the governor dropped to both knees. He bowed his head to the floor, saluting the legendary Supreme Order. The entire ballroom fell into a dead, suffocating silence. Chloe and her relatives quickly started shouting in disbelief. They claimed Austin was just using a cheap plastic toy to fool them. Chloe insisted he was nothing but a fraud from a night school. Governor Sterling hesitated, wanting to verify the token's chip. Right then, the elegant Master Silas stepped out from the crowd. Silas claimed he would protect Austin and handle the fallout himself. Seeing Silas step in, the governor's confidence began to waver. Suddenly, the heavy double doors opened for General Vance. The gala turned into a High Zan stakes standoff for power and survival. The card they called a cheap toy held a world Zan ending secret. The investment banquet was turning into a total corporate execution. The solemn investment ritual was shattered by a sharp shout. An officer led his tactical squad forward, cornering Rose and Austin. "Hand over the Supreme Order or you leave in a body bag," he barked. Faced with the threat, Austin stood his ground without blinking. He vowed to protect his students' safety until his last breath. The billionaire Ethan stood by Rose, watching the scene coolly. He threw out a few sarcastic remarks, completely ignoring Austin. As the standoff grew hot, Ethan's powerful father entered the room. The old man was incredibly arrogant, putting heavy pressure on his son. Suddenly, the legendary Master Silas walked out from the smoke. The crowd dropped their heads, bowing down to the old master. They assumed this mysterious figure was the true supreme ruler. But instead of fixing the chaos, Silas locked his eyes on little Lily. He reached out his hand, preparing to take the girl by force. "I will see you pay for your crimes today, old man," Austin growled. He stepped forward, unleashing his raw force against the master. The room exploded into a battle zone as red energy flashed out. The bodyguards dropped to the floor one by one like dead weight. Little Lily got struck in the crossfire, collapsing onto the rug. Austin dropped his guard, shielding her body from the falling rubble. The final lesson on power and greed exploded inside the ballroom. Austin stood outside the iron gates, blocked by his mother Zan in Zen law. Victoria bragged that the family just secured a multi-Zan billion deal. She refused to let Austin see his sick daughter Lily in the house. She pointed at Scarlett, calling her a cheap street girl. Austin didn't argue. He just pulled out his phone and made a call. Minutes later, Chloe received a direct executive command from the top. She trembled, ordering the guards to unlock the gates for Austin. Right then, a famous masked miracle doctor arrived at the estate. Chloe offered a 10 Zan billion Zan dollar check to save her daughter. But the great Dr. Rose didn't even look at the money. "I am only here because of Master Austin's pure heart," Rose said coldly. Austin watched her walk inside, a frown forming on his face. The doctor's movements and posture felt incredibly familiar to him. The scene cuts to a luxury Rolls Jan Royce pulling up to a medical temple. Austin carried a sleeping Lily out of the leather passenger suite. Outside the doors, Scarlett complained that the doctor was probably ugly. Austin snapped at her, telling her to show respect to medical talent. Chloe scoffed, claiming Austin was living in a total daydream. Billionaires can't even get an hour with her. Why would she see you? Chloe stepped up to the intercom, shouting her multi-10 billion offer. But inside the private room, the ultimate twist was revealed. The supreme miracle doctor removed her silk face mask smoothly. She was actually Austin's female student from the night school. The entire medical emergency was a test she set up for her teacher. To win the top spot in the class, she played the part of the doctor. She opened the doors, ready to trap the prey coming to her clinic. Over at the temple courtyard, a fierce battle was happening. The villain Silas was cornered by Scarlet's elite security force. He unleashed a smoke bomb, vanishing into a cloud of red smoke. "I will return for the ancient scroll in 3 days," his voice echoed. Austin arrived late, looking completely confused by the magic trick. He assumed the old man had mastered some high-Zan-level kung fu moves. Scarlet laughed, explaining it was just a cheap optical illusion. Austin nodded, assuming the old fraud ran away because of his own power. Scarlet knew the truth, keeping quiet about the student's hidden test. Right then, Victoria appeared out of nowhere, looking shocked. "How the hell are you still breathing, Austin?" she screamed. The time matrix overlaps as Rose opens the clinic doors for Lily. Once the family clears out, Rose and Scarlet start bickering. The two female students are highly jealous of each other's status. Both want to achieve the highest score on Austin's final test. Suddenly, the arrogant Boston heir Vance crashes the lobby. He offers $5 million, demanding Rose treat his business partner. Scarlet laughs in his face, calling his budget an absolute joke. Chloe steps in, telling Vance that the doctor has already taken Lily's case. Vance sneers, calling Austin a toxic loser who doesn't deserve medicine. "There is no way a broke teacher could convince the top doctor," he barked, but Chloe shuts him down, admitting Austin was the one who got her inside. Soon, Rose walks out, announcing Lily's stable condition, but she notes the girl was infected by Silas's lethal energy toxin. "We must track down the old man to secure the real antidote," she says. Vance tries to flatter Rose, trying to blame Scarlet for the rumors. He claims Scarlet said Rose only helped Austin because of his face. Rose smiles darkly, delivering a total shock to the young heir. She's right. "I only took the case because he's incredibly hot," she says. To secure the antidote for his girl, Austin decides to hunt Silas. Vance laughs, warning Chloe to cut all ties with the Night-Zan school teacher. Silas is setting a fatal trap at the upcoming summit to execute him, Vance warns. Meanwhile, the multi-Zan billionaire tycoon Mr. Sterling is furious. He is beating his son Ethan with a heavy leather belt in the study. Ethan had offended Austin without realizing his supreme background. Austin was the living god who taught his father everything about commerce. Learning the truth, Ethan's knees turn into jelly as he trembles. The father and son vow to risk their lives for Austin at the summit. The flashback returns to the night Lily first fell ill in the room. Victoria and Chloe blamed the entire medical crisis on Austin's actions. They claimed his Night-Zan school job brought bad luck to the family. Scarlet saw through their little test, guiding Austin to the clinic. Back in the present, Vance keeps bragging about Silas's assassin army. Scarlet just smiles, suggesting they march straight to the temple to finish it. Vance scoffs, thinking she is a delusional girl with zero tactical awareness. But this time, Chloe steps up, standing firmly right beside Austin. "I am not running anymore," she says. "We face this storm together, Austin." Austin and his followers pulled up outside a private estate. The heavy iron gates were locked tight. "Mr. Silas sure likes to play hard to get," Austin muttered. Frank couldn't stand the snobbish attitude anymore. He stepped forward, ready to test the old man's strength. But Silas unleashed a massive wave of golden energy. The raw impact sent Frank flying backward. His right hand cracked and fresh blood dripped onto the dirt. Silas calmly closed his aura, taking the 5,000 Zan dollar deposit. "I'll show up at your little party," Silas said indifferently. Outside the gates, Frank was completely trembling in fear. He worshipped his grandfather's absolute god Zan-like power. Silas just smiled, keeping a steady composure. "This is just a mid-Zan level test from our teacher," Silas noted. The scene abruptly cuts to a grand packed ballroom. Ryan, the lead master, made a dramatic entrance with Sasha. Ryan looked at the crowd with absolute mocking contempt. "He has zero energy tracks. He is just a cheap scammer," Ryan sneered. Sasha went wild with rage, her eyes burning with with fury. The two corporate factions traded sharp insults on the floor. The noise quickly brought Governor Sterling over to the center. Ryan held his ground, demanding the guards remove the outcasts. "These broke losers don't have the status to stay here," he barked. Meanwhile, Chloe was talking to Austin outside the house. Silas slowly opened the front door to greet them. Austin bowed politely, asking Silas for professional aid. He wanted to hire tactical bodyguards to keep himself safe. Silas agreed smoothly, asking how many men he needed. Austin ran the numbers and adjusted his premium jacket. "5 elite guards are enough for my detail," he replied, but the second they entered the grand ballroom, trouble hit. Ryan spotted them instantly, his sneer turning dangerous. Right then, Julian, the billionaire heir, stepped up with Chloe. Julian relied on his family's multi-Dan billion-dollar fund. He launched a brutal verbal assault straight at Austin. He screamed insults, humiliating the Night Zan schoolteacher publicly. The toxic scene threw a heavy shadow over the entire gala. Suddenly, the billionaire Ethan stormed the room with his guards. He walked directly toward Julian with an intense gaze. "You think your family cash allows you to rule this city, Julian?" Ethan growled. The once Jan arrogant Ryan and Julian instantly dropped their heads. They bowed respectfully, terrified of Ethan's massive leverage. Ethan announced he was only here to execute 3 objectives. He protected Austin's honor without a single second of hesitation. He called Sasha a superficial girl who wasn't worthy of Austin. Next, Vance stepped in to introduce Ethan to Chloe. Ryan led Sasha away, whispering about the secret factions. He wanted intel on the war between the Overlord and his master. Sasha saw this as her one shot to save her bank accounts. She begged Ryan to show mercy and rescue her sick daughter. Vance chimed in, kissing his boots to buy his medical favor. Then came the ultimate reality Zan-shattering drop of the night. Ethan brought out an unimaginable fortune for Austin's welcome gift. 100 custom Rolls-Royce Royce cars cleared the streets. The absolute deed to the Beverly Crest mansion was thrown down. A Dragon Zan etched platinum card worth $2 trillion was flashed, and 99% of White Dragon Holdings was signed over. Ryan stepped forward excitedly, thinking the wealth was his. But Ethan let out a cold laugh, announcing the true owner. "Every single dollar belongs to Master Austin," Ethan roared. The twist left Julian and Ryan completely frozen like statues. To save their pride, they forced a laugh and kept mocking him. They claimed a broke teacher couldn't handle that much power, but Austin adjusted his cuffs completely unbothered. He said coldly. "I don't have time to watch your pathetic little boardroom theater." Sasha and Vance kept barking insults from the side of the lounge. Sasha went wild with rage, seeing his relaxed composure. Ethan and Vance kept dropping sharp jeers to humiliate her. Faced with their combined media attacks and corporate plots, Austin finally dropped his silence. Looking at the crowd, he announced his supreme objective for entering this summit. "I am going to execute the fake old master Silas," he said. "I will rip the antidote from his hands and save my little Lily." Austin stood in the center of the lavish VIP ballroom. The elites surrounded him, dropping passive Zan aggressive insults. Ethan stepped up with a fake smile, pushing the heavy chest forward. His words were sharp as daggers, trying to mock the stranger. "Let's see if this little brother can handle real money," he laughed. The guests watched coolly, waiting to see Austin break under the heat. Suddenly, Chloe stepped in, changing her previous attitude. She defended Austin, telling Ethan to cut the corporate drama. But the billionaire group refused to stop their aggressive behavior. They squeezed harder, launching a brutal wave of verbal abuse. Right then, Ben stepped forward to back Austin's play. He confronted Ethan's faction, his voice echoing through the suite. The shouting match escalated, throwing the gala into total chaos. The boardroom drama reached a peak when Ryan played dirty. He threw his own body onto the floor, faking a major injury. Austin and Frank assaulted an executive, Ryan screamed out. The media instantly turned on Austin, calling him a violent thug. The crowd demanded security arrest him for corporate assault. Just as Austin was cornered, the miracle Dr. Rose arrived. She moved like a shadow, using her precision needle skills. She struck Ryan's pressure points, forcing him to jump up. The fake injury was completely exposed to the entire room. The revelation left the rival faction looking incredibly stupid. A desperate elder tried to step up to save the firm's stock, but Rose read his medical file, shutting him down instantly. Austin unleashed his raw, hidden energy against the security teams. The Grandmasters were broken, fleeing the building in total defeat. Austin's followers were trapped in a rigged corporate game. Frank was heavily bleeding, but the clinics refused to treat him. The old Snake Master Silas locked down all medical access in town. Scarlet, representing their ultimate firepower, clutched her sword. "I will strip away his fake examiner mask tonight," she vowed. With one quiet word from Austin, the tactical war officially started. Silas let out a psychotic laugh, activating the Grand Array. The ballroom turned into a slaughterhouse within seconds. Thugs in dark suits moved in to execute the remaining board. Austin's squad was pinned down, fighting for their very breath. Scarlet threw her body in front of him, her blade catching the light. At the edge of survival, Scarlet confessed her hidden love. Tears mixed with the rain as she looked back at Austin. "I fell for you the second we met in that classroom," she cried, "but I was too terrified of our class difference to speak up." Faced with the final array strike, Austin's eyes turned red. A dangerous, unholy glow radiated from his pupils into the dark. He kept insisting he was just a regular Night Zan school teacher, but the crushing aura he released made Master Silas shiver in fear. A blinding gold flash consumed the platform as the shields broke. Scarlet kept her sword up, ready for the next wave of killers. The real battle for dominance had just crossed the starting line. Austin faced an absolute icy rejection from his ex-Jan wife, Chloe. "Relying on external investors doesn't make you a man," she sneered. Vance and the toxic mother Victoria joined the attack immediately. They mocked his old clothes, calling him a broke, divorced loser. "You're a Night Zan school peasant dreaming of a second chance," they laughed. Victoria grabbed Lily by the arm, forcing her away from her dad. Chloe dropped the real reason behind their aggressive custody plot. "The girl carries the legendary sacred bloodline inside her veins," she said. "We are seizing her assets for our own corporate empire tonight." Austin stepped in, shielding his daughter with an icy glare. Just as the guards pulled their weapons, the ultimate twist landed. The supreme miracle Dr. Rose arrived, wearing a white wedding gown. She dropped her cold corporate act, announcing her official graduation. "I am done hiding my true face from the media," she shouted. She walked straight to Austin and dropped to one knee to propose. "I am taking over as Lily's mother tonight. Clear the path," she barked. The declaration left Chloe and Victoria completely frozen on the carpet. The scene shifts to the main entrance of the Grand Convention Hall. Austin and Frank were blocked by a squad of snobbish bouncers. "You need a 10 Zan million Zan dollar asset check to enter this gala," they sneered. Victoria and Vance appeared behind them like toxic ghosts again. They laughed, asking if a Night Zan school teacher could even buy a ticket. Faced with their jeers, Chloe suddenly dropped a tactical nuke. She revealed the massive gifts the Shofu Ethan had transferred to him. The 90 Zen 9% control of White Dragon Holdings was real. 100 custom Rolls Jan Royce cars were registered under his name. The luxury Beverly Crest estate belonged to him legally, and the Black Dragon card held a balance of $2 trillion. Hearing about the infinite fortune, Victoria's face flipped instantly. She put on a fake smile, trying to hug Austin's arm like a puppy. "We are all one big happy family. Let's go inside together, son," she cried. But Austin just adjusted his coat, his voice dripping with ice. "I don't touch dirty corporate blood money. Keep your trash," he said. Victoria went wild with rage, screaming that he was a brainless peasant. Seeing the guards push her dad, little Lily stepped forward. "My dad is a living legend. You will regret this," she cried. She tapped her smartwatch, making an emergency call to Dr. Rose. Austin took her hand, walking past the security line anyway. The head guard pulled his nightstick, preparing to strike him down. Austin sighed, mentioning the chauffeur Ethan used to sell street food. The bouncer went into a frenzy, thinking he could buy favor by killing him. Insulting the richest man in America means your execution, he roared. Suddenly, the general manager of the venue dropped from the sky. He unleashed a brutal strike on his own guards, screaming at them. "This is the Supreme VIP Dr. Rose personally ordered us to escort." The manager stripped their uniforms, firing the security team on the spot. He bowed past his waist, leading Austin into the central hall. The humiliated Chloe and Victoria quickly sneaked in right behind them. The memory flashes back to Frank begging Austin to attend the gala. Austin noticed the massive dark circles under his students' eyes. "Did Ethan beat you up again for failing your math test?" Austin joked. Meanwhile, at the Lynn estate, Victoria was holding a gold card. The invitation was for the ultimate tribute gala hosted by the king. The old woman assumed Vance used his Heiress-level ties to secure it. The mother and daughter smiled, plotting to use the event to buy power soon. The grand climax of the tribute gala exploded in the hall. The villain Master Silas went full psycho, activating the array. He tried to trap the shareholders to steal the ancient scroll assets. But to Austin, the old man just looked like a bad actor from a movie. Faced with the energy shields, Austin didn't even shift his stance. He casually waved his left hand, releasing a world's end-ending force. The unbreakable array shattered into pieces like cheap glass. Master Silas completely collapsed onto the floor, his mind breaking. His half-Zan immortal tracking meant nothing compared to Austin's power. He hit the floorboards, weeping and begging to become his student. "Please let me serve you so we can fight our rivals together," he cried. But crossing the Overlord means an immediate death sentence. Austin's top Zan-tier students lined up, mocking his pathetic face. The crisis passed, and Austin walked through the courtyard with Lily. Lily whispered a secret, looking up at her father with a smile. "I was never in a coma, Dad. Dr. Rose staged it as a class test." Chloe ran out of the lobby, trying to grab the girl's hand again. Austin cut her off with a growl, severing all family ties forever. The scene shifts to a hidden Heiress classroom downtown. The ultimate truth drops, making your spine go completely numb. Scarlett, Frank, the tycoon, and Dr. Rose were sitting at desks. The global masters looked like scared kids in front of the board. They were all-night Zan school students under Austin's personal care. The entire corporate war and the array crisis were just a setup. The students built the drama just to hand in a perfect final exam. Since Austin hadn't graded their papers, Scarlett lost her patience. She slammed the desk, planning this massive gala to test his mood. Outside, Silas went completely insane after learning the truth. He realized he wasn't even worthy of being a student in this room. The female General Vance looked down at his shaking body with ice. "Throw this garbage into the Dragon Vault for eternal damnation," she ordered. The air inside the main ballroom turned completely to ice. The mother Victoria looked at the rows of multi-Zan billion dowry boxes. She was losing her mind, screaming at the luxury display. She couldn't believe a broke loser could lock down a billionaire bride. Chloe couldn't take the hypocrisy anymore, cutting her mother off. Austin raised the top graduates in this country. "Victoria," she said, "our family was just too blind to see the legend standing before us." Vance kept barking from the back, calling the guards fake actors. "He just hired some theater kids to put on a show," he yelled. But Chloe shut him down, mentioning the miracle doctor's assistance. She dropped to her knees in front of Austin, her face full of regret. "Please forgive me, Austin. I was a fool to walk away from you," she wept. Rose laughed from the stage, watching her pathetic little drama. "You threw away a god, and now you want him back. Too late, honey," Rose sneered. Austin stood in the center of the floor, his mind fracturing. A million broken memories from the past were crashing into his brain. Chloe refused to give up, using Lily to play her emotional cards. "Don't you want to give our little girl a whole home, Austin?" she begged. Rose interrupted her, telling Austin to drop the heavy family chains. "Follow your own heart and step into real happiness with me," Rose said. Little Lily looked up, her innocent face filled with confusion. "I like both Aunt Rose and Mommy. I don't know what to do, Dad," she cried. Austin gripped his head in pain, needing to escape the building. The sudden weight of the truth was pushing his sanity to the edge, but the grand execution of destiny was moving toward the room. His master Zan-level disciples entered the ballroom under Frank's lead. The elite martial artists looked at Austin, shouting in unison, marry her, take the crown tonight, master." The thunderous roar shook the crystal chandeliers of the building. Silas laughed, telling his teacher to just accept the beautiful bride. Julian turned pale as death, seeing the army of gods backing the loser. Victoria froze on the spot, covering her mouth in total silence. The corporate heir Ben lost his nerve, backing away from the platform. His lead guardian tried to pull Austin out of the hot zone, but Rose pulled her blade, blocking the exit with total finality. "Nobody leaves this room until my husband makes his choice," she growled. Just as the multi-Zen faction standoff reached an absolute peak, a heavy, thunderous footstep echoed from the grand entrance. The supreme female general, Scarlet, stepped onto the long red carpet. She wore her royal red war garments, throwing off a crushing aura. The entire crowd fell into a dead, terrified silence at her presence. She looked around the room like she was scanning a pack of insects. She marched straight to the front, making a sovereign announcement. "The Supreme Overlord is taking Austin as her husband today." She drew her blade, looking at the billionaires with a lethal glare. "Who votes in favor and who wants to die right now?" she asked. After a frozen pause, Victoria screamed in absolute mental collapse. Chloe stared at the general, her eyes wide with total disbelief. Scarlet didn't even waste a glance on the basic family trash. She ordered her tactical team to clear the area without mercy. "Step out of line and the vault has plenty of empty cells for you," she said. With a wave of her glove, she ordered Chloe and Victoria arrested. Seeing the soldiers move in, Lily grabbed Scarlet's red cape. "Please don't hurt my family, Auntie Scarlet," the girl wept. Austin watched in confusion as Lily dropped the final secret. 3 years ago, Scarlet was hunted by global cartels in the wild. Austin found her in the mountains, teaching her the divine martial code. He destroyed her enemies from the dark, building her royal empire. The truth hit Chloe and Victoria like an atomic bomb strike. The man they called a broke loser was the god of the Supreme General. But under the massive pressure of his unlocked memories, Austin broke. The inner darkness took over, and his eyes turned a demonic gold. A freezing, lethal energy field erupted from his physical body. He gripped his splitting head, roaring at the top of his lungs. "I have zero history with any of you. I am picking nobody today. I am making no corporate decisions. Get the hell away from me." Scarlet's face went strict, warning him about the natural order. "You crushed the Silas Array and signed the mandate of Heaven, Master. Breaking your oath before the sky will trigger absolute destruction." Julian tried to stir the pot, laughing from the back row. "Just marry all 4 of them, man. Enjoy the billionaire harem." Austin turned his golden eyes on him, his aura turning savage. "Shut your mouth. I am marrying absolutely nobody tonight." A deep rumble of thunder shook the roof of the facility. Scarlet realized the king was moving into a total psychological warp. The weather anomalies outside were threatening to flatten the grid to save the city from his raw, unchecked energy fallout. The general had to make a strict military executive decision. She ordered her top commander, General Vance, to strike immediately. Vance didn't hesitate, leading his elite guard squad inside. They pulled their plasma swords, forming the suppression matrix. They locked onto Austin, trying to bind his overflowing aura. Scarlet shouted from the back, her face full of intense stress, "Burn the entire matrix if you have to, but save his human core." In a split second, light and energy exploded through the ballroom. Vance channeled the array, shooting white lightning chains forward. The wave of physical pressure slammed toward Austin like an ocean, but the half-Zen immortal Austin had reached a level beyond humanity. Faced with the tactical matrix strike, he just raised his left palm. A golden geometric shield blocked the entire military offensive smoothly. Amidst the shockwaves, Rose pulled her twin blades and charged in. Her shadow faction joined the fight, and the gala turned into an all-Xan-out war. The situation went completely out of control as everyone fought for him. Rivals and lovers were trading blows on the shattered floor tiles, but inside the center of the storm, Austin's immortal core woke up. The human pain left his eyes, replaced by the ice of a god. He looked down at the mortals fighting over cash and earthly romance. A cold, self-deprecating smile formed on his perfect lips. Surrounded by a web of electric fire, he delivered his final choice. His voice boomed like a nuclear blast inside their earpieces. "Since I am already a god, why should I care about human clay?" The second he spoke, dark clouds covered the sky above the city. A massive golden pillar of light tore straight through the roof. The cosmic energy column slammed down, lifting Austin into the air. The sheer weight of the divine aura shoved Scarlet and Rose back. Nobody in the room had the right to even look at the light. Austin reached out his hand and the ancient supreme sword flew to him. The weapon let out a loud roar as it locked into his fingers. With golden eyes and ancient patterns flashing on his skin, he rose. He cast one final, detached glance at the crying mortals below. He severed his earthly timeline without a single shred of regret. An operatic track blasted through the audio system as he aimed high. "The celestial gates are open. I am stepping into the clouds today. The family bonds are dead. Austin ascends to the throne." With one last thunderclap, a blinding flash of white light hit the screen. He cut all human ties, flying straight into the high heavens. The entire elite crowd was left kneeling in the dust, weeping for their loss. The mortal drama was over, and the legend had finally left the earth. His oldest daughter, Mia, was quietly doing her homework in her room. The house was completely still, save for the scratching of her pencil. She was focused, determined, and trying to ignore the heavy tension in the air. Meanwhile, Ethan was out in the yard, sitting on a rusted bench under the old oak tree. He was happily playing with his youngest daughter, Lily, tossing her gently in the air. Lily's innocent laughter echoed through the small, worn-out yard of their Seattle home. For a brief moment, it felt like a perfectly normal, happy American family. That's when Chloe walked through the creaking wooden gate, carrying a heavy basket of fresh fish. Her face was pale, her shoulders slumped, and she looked completely exhausted from a long day. Seeing his wife in such a state, Ethan felt a sudden, sharp pang of guilt in his chest. He rushed over immediately, itching to take the heavy, dripping load off her aching hands. He put on his most gentle smile, trying to show her that things were different now. He softly told his wife to stay inside, rest her tired feet, and keep the kids warm. He insisted that he would take the basket down to the market and handle the sales himself. But the moment he reached for the handle, Chloe's entire body went rigid with fear. She looked at him with pure suspicion, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. She gripped the wooden basket tightly against her chest, refusing to let it go. "You've never done an honest day of business in your entire life, Ethan," she snapped bitterly. Her voice trembled with a mixture of deep anger, profound sadness, and long-term exhaustion. "There's literally no food left in the pantry, and the girls haven't had a real meal all week. If you take these fish and gamble them away at the docks, we are completely done for. We won't even have a roof over our heads by tomorrow morning if you lose this money." Ethan opened his mouth to explain, but the sheer terror in her eyes silenced him completely. He realized that words meant nothing to a woman he had broken so many times before. The scene cuts to the bustling, crowded local fish market down by the Seattle piers. The smell of saltwater, crushed ice, and fresh catch filled the damp, chilly morning air. Old man Jack, who ran the busy produce stall right next to Ethan's designated spot, walked over. Jack was smoking a cheap cigar, shaking his head, and singing Ethan's praises to anyone listening. He mentioned how Chloe always defended Ethan whenever the gossiping neighbors talked trash. "She told everyone you were grinding out in the big city, working your fingers to the bone. She said you were doing it all just to give your beautiful family a real shot at the American dream." Hearing his wife's fierce loyalty and true feelings tore Ethan's soul into absolute shreds. He remembered the screaming, the crying, and all the horrific, selfish mistakes he had made. A deep wave of suffocating guilt washed over him, making it hard to even breathe. Then Jack leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a confidential, rough whisper. He mentioned that the big corporate boss, Mr. Vance, was arriving in town the day after tomorrow. Vance was looking to restructure the entire pier and pick a brand new market leader. The position came with massive financial backing and a guaranteed future for whoever won it. Ethan's eyes lit up as a spark of ambition ignited inside his mind. He realized this This was the golden opportunity he needed to rewrite his family's dark fate. He reached into his worn denim jacket and pulled out a thick, detailed market growth proposal. It was a comprehensive business plan that he had stayed up all night writing by candlelight. "Do me a huge favor and hand this directly to Mr. Vance when he lands," Ethan whispered to Jack. "This isn't just a basic idea. This plan will streamline the docks and make everyone rich. Trust me, a high-level businessman like Vance is going to love every single page of this." Jack looked at the thick stack of papers, deeply impressed by the neat, professional handwriting. He smiled widely, patted Ethan firmly on the back, and happily agreed to pass it along. But before Ethan could even lay out his fresh catch on the ice, trouble found him. The heavy thud of combat boots echoed against the wooden planks of the pier. The neighborhood thug, Tony, and his massive big brother, Frank, marched up furiously. They were flanked by a couple of low-life enforcers from the local collection crew. Without saying a single word, Frank kicked the table over, sending the fish scattering into the mud. They completely trashed Ethan's entire stall, stomping on the ice and smashing the crates. Tony stepped forward, spitting on the ground, his face twisted in a smug, mocking grin. He started yelling at the top of his lungs about how Ethan had put hands on him earlier that week. He swore to the entire market that Ethan wouldn't sell a single fish in this town ever again. "Your mapping days on this pier are officially over, you pathetic little gambler," Tony sneered. Then, he crossed the line completely, openly disrespecting Ethan's wife in front of the crowd. He demanded that Ethan hand Chloe over to their crew for a few days to wipe his debts clean. "Let her come over and clean our place, maybe entertain the boys, and we'll call it even." That disgusting insult was the absolute breaking point for the reformed man. Ethan's vision went completely red, and the blood roared like a furnace in his ears. He didn't hesitate for a fraction of a second. He snapped with pure primal fury. He lunged across the ruined table, his hand wrapping around a heavy, sharpened meat cleaver. Before anyone could react, he slammed Frank against the wooden pillar, the blade pressed to his neck. The entire market went dead silent, the crowd gasping at Ethan's sudden, terrifying speed. Frank's tough guy act instantly vanished as he felt the cold, sharp steel biting into his skin. Over in the executive boardroom, overlooking the harbor, Mr. Vance was reviewing the documents. He was sipping a hot cup of black coffee, reading Ethan's proposal, completely blown away. The sheer brilliance of the logistics, the revenue models, and the expansion strategies left him speechless. Every single sentence in the plan pointed to a rare generational business genius. "Who the hell wrote this?" Vance muttered to his assistant, his eyes wide with absolute amazement. "Find him." Just then, his secretary rushed in, breathless, announcing that the author was currently in deep trouble. She reported that Ethan was being cornered and threatened by the local dock thugs down at the pier. The moment he heard this, Mr. Vance slammed his heavy fist onto the mahogany desk. He wasn't about to let a potential multi-million-dollar asset get broken by common criminals. He rounded up his personal security team and headed straight down to the chaotic scene back at the muddy market. The atmosphere was thick with violence and impending doom. The corrupt district manager, Craig, had already arrived with a dozen heavily armed guards. Craig was on the take, receiving monthly bribes from Frank and Tony to keep the docks dirty. He pointed a finger at Ethan, warning him to drop the cleaver immediately or face federal charges. "Drop the knife and get on your knees, Ethan, or you'll be floating face down by sunset." With the powerful manager backing him up, Tony became even more arrogant and reckless. He stepped right into Ethan's personal space, laughing like a maniac, completely untouchable. He screamed that he was going to ruin Chloe right in front of Ethan's little daughters. "I'm going to make sure your kids watch every single second of it," Tony whispered maliciously. Ethan lost his mind completely, the final thread of his restraint snapping like a twig. He brought his heavy boot up, kicking Tony squarely in the chest with the force of a truck. The impact sent Tony flying backward, crashing through a row of wooden barrels and collapsing. Craig's face turned purple with rage, and he ordered his guards to draw their weapons. He threatened to throw Ethan straight into the freezing ocean and bury his memory forever. But Ethan didn't flinch, didn't blink, and didn't step back even an inch from the guns. He held his blood-stained blade ready, his eyes burning with a terrifying desire to fight to the death. "Come on then," Ethan roared, his voice echoing across the harbor like a thunderstorm. "Let's see who dies first." Weapon in hand, Ethan stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and the corrupt guards. His aura was so intense, so completely unhinged, that the armed men actually took a step back. Frank, still held tightly in Ethan's grip, completely lost his nerve as the blade nicked his throat. He started crying like a terrified child, his knees buckling beneath his massive weight. He dropped straight into the mud, begging Ethan for mercy with a pathetic cracking voice. "Please, man, don't do it. You are the boss. You are the king of this pier. Just let me live." He was practically worshipping Ethan, willing to say absolutely anything to save his own skin. Ethan spat on the ground right next to Frank's face, his expression filled with pure disgust. "You are a pathetic excuse for a man," Ethan barked, kicking him away like a piece of trash. Beside him, Tony was shaking uncontrollably, the arrogance completely drained from his body. He was literally on all fours in the dirt, whining and begging for forgiveness like a whipped dog. Mr. Vance arrived with his security detail just in time to witness the entire dramatic showdown. He took in the scene, noting the ruined stall, the weeping thugs, and Ethan's unbroken stance. Vance walked right past the guards and turned sharply to the trembling manager. "Craig, if I ever catch you letting your boys run wild on my docks again, you are fired and blacklisted," Vance roared. "In fact, pack your trash and get out of my sight before I have the police audit your books." Craig's face drained of color, and he stumbled backward, unable to offer a single excuse. The three thugs scrambled away into the dark alleyways, soaking wet, muddy, and thoroughly humiliated. Mr. Vance turned around, a warm, genuine smile breaking across his weathered face. He walked right up to Ethan, ignoring the meat cleaver, and extended a hand in deep respect. He genuinely wanted to know how a common dock worker had developed such a flawless business strategy. "You are wasted out here throwing fish, son," Vance said. "Let's talk about the future." The story fast-forwards through a swirling montage of time, landing in the year 2018. The setting was a sleek, ultra-modern penthouse office overlooking the glittering skyline of New York City. The television mounted on the wall was broadcasting a breaking financial news segment. The anchor was announcing that the oldest daughter, Mia, had built a massive global seafood empire. Her corporation, Yingsho International, had officially topped the prestigious Forbes billionaire list. She was being hailed as the most influential and ruthless business mogul of the modern era. Meanwhile, in a stark, sterile hospital room down in the city, a completely different reality played out. A middle-aged, withered Ethan was tied down to a cold metal hospital bed with heavy leather straps. He was completely still, his skin pale and translucent, his body ravaged by time and regret. He was hooked up to a loud, rhythmic oxygen mask, barely holding on to the final threads of life. The door clicked open, and Mia walked coldly to his bedside, her expensive heels clicking on the tile. She dressed in a sharp, tailored black suit, her face completely expressionless, like a statue of ice. She stared down at the dying, pathetic man who had once been the terror of her childhood. "How does it feel to just lie there in the dark and wait for death to take you?" she asked quietly. Her voice was devoid of any warmth, carrying the weight of 20 years of unhealed trauma. Ethan closed his eyes in absolute agony as a tidal wave of horrific memories flooded his mind. In his mind's eye, he was dragged right back to a stormy, terrifying night in the winter of 1995. Back then, he wasn't a business genius. He was nothing but a violent drunk and a hopeless gambler, having lost every single penny at the underground poker dens. He had staggered home completely wasted. He had broken through the front door, screaming for money, tearing the house apart in a blind rage. When Chloe tried to stop him, he flew off the handle and beat his family black and blue. He had dragged his crying wife and screaming children, locking them tightly inside the dark bedroom. He had slammed the heavy iron bolt shut, ignoring their desperate pounding on the wood. He had stood in the hallway, reeking of cheap whiskey, screaming that he was going to sell them off to pay his debts. Standing by the modern hospital bed, Mia pulled a crumpled, yellowed photograph from her pocket. It was an old Polaroid, a picture of a happy home they could have had, a life full of light. It was a beautiful dream that Ethan had personally destroyed with his own violent, selfish hands. Ethan began to weep openly, the tears mixing with the sweat on his oxygen mask as he begged for mercy. He made muffled, pathetic sounds, desperately wanting to hold her hand just one last time. But Mia remained entirely heartless, her gaze steady, cold, and completely unyielding. Slowly, deliberately, she tore the precious photograph into tiny, unrecoverable pieces right before his eyes. She let the scraps fall onto his chest like winter snow, her voice finally cracking with buried rage. "When I was only 7 years old, you stole every single dime Mom saved for our winter coats," she cried. "You didn't care if we starved to death in the cold as long as you could buy another hand of cards. You came back smelling like a distillery, beat her until she couldn't stand, and broke her spirit. My little sister Lily developed a terrifying burning fever from the sheer shock of your violence. Because you had thrown all our emergency money down a slot machine. Mom had nothing left. She had to walk through a freezing rainstorm, knocking door to door, begging the neighbors for medicine. And that was the exact night the old electric heater sparked in the hallway. The door was locked from the outside. Ethan, you locked it. We couldn't get out. I had to watch through the cracked window as the flames burned Mom and my baby sister alive. I survived by jumping from the roof, but their screams have followed me every single day of my life." Amidst the phantom echoes of those heartbreaking, historical screams, the memory of the fire consumed him. Ethan closed his eyes for the final time, his chest collapsing under the immense weight of guilt. Before his consciousness slipped into the black void of death, he cried out to the heavens. He begged the universe, God, or anyone listening for just one single chance to make things right. He didn't want wealth or power. He just wanted to be a good husband, a real father, a protector. He wanted to absorb all their pain and burn in hell himself if it meant they could live. After what felt like an eternity of suffocating darkness, Ethan gasped loudly and bolted upright. A sharp, sudden shout escaped his lips as his eyes flew wide open in absolute panic. He was sweating profusely, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He looked up, expecting the sterile white ceiling of the hospital or the flames of hell. Instead, he saw a creaking, rusty old ceiling fan spinning slowly in the humid air. He saw cheap, faded holiday posters pasted onto the cracked plaster walls. On the wooden nightstand sat the intact, unburnt family photograph in a simple glass frame. He stared down at his hands. They were young, calloused, and completely free of medical IV lines. He looked over to the corner of the room and froze, his breath catching in his throat. There, sitting on the small mattress, were his completely unharmed wife and his 2 little daughters. He was utterly stunned, his mind struggling to process the impossible reality before him. He had actually traveled back in time to the spring of 1995, back when his family was still alive. Seeing his beautiful daughters breathing, moving, and safe, Ethan wept with pure unadulterated joy. He threw the thin blanket aside and reached out his arms, desperately wanting to pull them into a hug. He wanted to feel their warmth, to convince himself that this wasn't just a cruel, dying hallucination, but the deep psychological trauma from his years of real-world abuse ran far too deep. The moment he moved toward them, Chloe turned deathly pale, her entire body shaking with fear. She threw herself over Mia and Lily, shielding both girls tightly beneath her own fragile body. "Don't you dare touch my girls, Ethan," she screamed in absolute high-pitched terror. "If you are angry about the money, if you want to hurt someone, just beat me. Leave them out of it." A sharp, agonizing pain pierced straight through Ethan's heart, worse than any physical wound. He realized the monster he had been, and he understood that trust would have to be earned in blood. But he didn't blow up in a rage like the old Ethan would have done. He stayed perfectly calm. Instead, he gently took off his warm denim jacket, moving with slow, deliberate, non-threatening motions. He stepped forward carefully, like a man approaching a frightened deer, and knelt down on the floorboards. He gently wrapped the soft jacket around Mia's shivering shoulders, keeping his distance. He fixed her small collar with tender care, his fingers trembling slightly as he avoided touching her skin. "Stay warm, sweetheart," he whispered softly, his voice thick with unshed tears. "Daddy's got you." Then he looked up and locked eyes with Chloe, his gaze steady, clear, and completely sober. "From this moment on, you don't have to carry the heavy loads anymore," Ethan said, his voice ringing with absolute certainty. "I'll handle the fish market, I'll handle the manual labor, and I will bring home the money. You stay home with our babies, keep them safe, and try to rest. I swear to you on my life, Chloe, I am done gambling, and I am done drinking forever. If I ever touch another bottle or a deck of cards, you can take the cleaver to my throat yourself." Chloe's eyes were still full of deep doubt and ancient pain, but something in his voice made her pause. She had never seen him look so clear-eyed, so grounded, and so thoroughly broken by remorse. Ethan stood up slowly, walked out of the room, and swore to himself he would rewrite their destiny. Later that afternoon, the rusty gate creaked open again, bringing a different kind of storm. Ethan's mother-in-law, Martha, marched into the yard, her face twisted in a permanent scowl. She was a bitter, greedy woman who lived on the wealthy side of town and hated Ethan with a passion. She stood in the center of the yard, acting all high and mighty, looking down her nose at him. She used every nasty, degrading word in the book to humiliate the good-for-nothing, low-life gambler. She didn't care about Chloe's actual happiness or the well-being of her young granddaughters. Her only real goal was to sell Chloe off to a wealthy, corrupt local businessman named Victor. Victor ran the local trucking lines, had deep pockets, and had been eyeing Chloe for a very long time. Martha had cut a backroom deal to hand her daughter over in exchange for a massive financial payout. She wanted that blood money to fund her own lifestyle, completely ignoring her daughter's marriage. "You are a cancer to this family, Ethan," Martha hissed, spitting on his clean porch. "Victor is a real man with a real bank account. He can give my daughter a proper life. If you have even an ounce of decency left, you'll sign the divorce papers and vanish." Faced with his mother-in-law's intense pressure and Victor's looming threats, Ethan made his choice. He stood tall, refusing to let her venomous words provoke him into a useless shouting match. He knew he had messed up badly in the past, and those errors couldn't be erased with simple words. So he stood firmly before the old woman, took a deep breath, and spoke with calm authority. "I don't care what you think of me, Martha, because the old Ethan died last night," he said clearly. "I am quitting the booze. I am quitting the cards, and I am going to build an empire for my wife. No matter how broke we are right now, I will work 20 hours a day to give them a peaceful life. You can take Victor's blood money and shove it, because Chloe is staying right here with me." To prove his commitment, Ethan walked down to the local jewelry shop later that evening. He used the last bit of money he earned from his honest day at the docks to buy a gift. He came home and handed Chloe a simple, elegant silver necklace with a small heart charm. It wasn't a fancy luxury item from a high-end boutique, but it represented his entire soul. It held every single ounce of his absolute commitment to salvage and save their broken home. Chloe held the small silver charm in her hand, a single tear escaping her eye as she looked at him. But the cold-hearted, arrogant Victor had absolutely no intention of letting them go so easily. He was used to getting exactly what he wanted, buying his way out of every single problem. Relying on his deep pockets and his political connections, he decided to handle things personally. The next evening, he marched right into Ethan's small living room, flanked by his corrupt manager, Craig. They didn't even knock, kicking the front door open and letting the cold night air rush inside. They threw insults left and right, laughing at the cheap furniture in the small space. Victor stepped up to Ethan, pulling out a thick stack of $100 bills and slapping them against Ethan's chest. fast. Take the cash, you pathetic joke, and sign the papers, Victor sneered, his breath smelling of expensive cigars. A woman like Chloe belongs in a mansion, not in a dump like this with a loser like you. Craig laughed in the background, stepping toward Chloe as if he was ready to drag her out by her hair. In that exact split second, the rage Ethan had been carefully suppressing for days exploded. He refused to take the disrespect lying down, and he refused to let these predators near his family. He didn't care about Victor's wealth, his connections, or the guards standing out on the street. He lunged toward the kitchen counter, his hand wrapping around a heavy, sharpened carving knife. With raw, unhinged defiance burning in his eyes, he stepped right into Victor's face, the blade raised. "If you or your lapdog take one more step toward my wife, I will gut you right here," Ethan growled. His voice was so drop-dead serious, so completely devoid of fear, that Victor's smug smile froze. He saw a man who had already been to hell and back, a man who truly had nothing left to lose. Victor took a slow step backward, his hands raised, realizing he had pushed the beast too far. "You are crazy, man," Victor whispered, his voice trembling slightly as he backed out the door. "This isn't over, Ethan. I'll make sure you burn for this," he threatened before scrambling into his car. Ethan stood in the doorway, the knife still tight in his grip, his chest heaving, as he watched them drive away. "Nobody touches my family," he muttered into the dark night, cementing his vow to the universe. The story then shifts back to a brief haunting vision of 2018, revealing the deep root of his pain. The old timeline Ethan had been so hopelessly addicted to gambling that his family constantly starved. Mia and Lily had spent their childhoods huddled in corners, listening to the shouts of angry lenders. They had endured an absolute living hell because of his selfishness and his violent outbursts. Now, back in the present, seeing Mia shivering in her bed with a mild seasonal fever triggered him. That old horrific nightmare of losing them in the fire haunted every waking second of his life. Every single move he made now, every drop of sweat, was his way of paying for those past sins. This fight down at the Seattle docks was no longer just about some money or a simple neighborhood dispute. It was about a desperate father and a broken husband doing whatever it took to rebuild his soul. He was willing to bleed, to fight, and to die to stick the pieces of his family back together. Right now, down by the dark, muddy riverbanks, Ethan was staring straight down a living hell. The sky was pitch black, a cold wind howling through the reeds as rain began to drizzle. Ethan and young Mia were pinned down in the mud, surrounded by three heavily masked thugs. The leader of the crew was sipping from a flask of cheap whiskey, laughing directly in Ethan's face. To them, Ethan was just a pathetic, weak gambler they could push around and manipulate. They had been hired by his old creditors to collect a debt that the old Ethan had run up months ago. The thug got incredibly cocky, pressing a heavy boot against Ethan's wounded ribs. "Call your wife, Ethan," the leader barked, tossing a cheap prepaid cell phone into the mud. "Tell Chloe to come down here to the riverbank right now, or we start breaking your kids' fingers. We want the whole family down here so we can settle this debt once and for all." But faced with extreme, immediate danger, Ethan showed a terrifying amount of backbone this time. He looked up through the mud and blood, a cold, mocking smile playing on his own lips. "You can go straight to hell," Ethan spat, refusing to give them a single inch of control. Enraged by his sudden defiance, the thug pulled a switchblade and drove it deep into Ethan's shoulder. Ethan screamed in agony, the bright red blood instantly soaking through his clean white shirt. Little Mia cried out in terror, breaking free from her captor and throwing her tiny body over her dad. "Stop it, don't hurt my daddy," she screamed, her voice cracking with pure innocent desperation. "If you want to sell someone, take me. Just leave my daddy alone." Those heartbreaking words from his 7-year-old girl ticked the lead thug off completely. He grabbed Mia by her hair, pulling her away from Ethan and raising his sharp blade. "You want to be a hero, kid. Let's see how you look with a permanent scar on this pretty face," he threatened. Terrified for his daughter's life, a burst of adrenaline exploded through Ethan's entire system. He forgot about the knife in his shoulder, forgot about the pain, and fought like an absolute madman. He lunged forward, grabbing the thug's wrist with both hands, twisting it with raw, primal power. The scene descended into absolute chaotic violence as they wrestled for control of the weapon. Meanwhile, back in the small coastal village neighborhood, the vibe was completely different. The rain hadn't hit the main street yet, and a warm light was glowing from Ethan's front porch. A group of elderly neighbors and local fishermen were standing in Chloe's yard, looking humbled. They had come to sincerely apologize to her for all the terrible rumors they had spread over the years. They admitted that they were wrong about Ethan, realizing he had truly turned his life around. He had spent the last month working tirelessly, helping the local fishermen negotiate better rates with the city. He was single-handedly bringing wealth and stability back to their struggling little community. Even the big corporate executives from the city had been singing his praises to the local papers. But right during this beautiful healing moment, a neighbor named David came crashing through the gate. He was sweating profusely, his clothes covered in mud, his face pale with absolute panic. He dropped a total devastating bombshell on the entire gathered crowd. "Chloe, you need to run down to the river right now," David gasped, clutching his chest. "I just saw Ethan down by the docks. He has gone back to his old ways. He is with the bookies. He is surrounded by thugs, and he is trying to sell little Mia to pay off his old poker debts." The entire yard went dead silent as everyone gasped in absolute horrified shock. The neighbors looked at Chloe with pity, assuming the wolf had simply gone back to his old tricks. But Chloe's reaction completely defied their expectations and shocked every single person there. She didn't cry, she didn't faint, and she flatly refused to believe a single word of the accusation. She had seen the love in Ethan's eyes, she had felt the warmth of his jacket, and she knew the truth. Seeing Ethan become a good, honorable man was the greatest blessing she had ever received. She wasn't about to stand by and let a bunch of cowards drag his name through the mud again. Ethan would never do that, Chloe shouted, her voice ringing with fierce, unbroken loyalty. "He is a good father, and he is protecting our daughter. If he is down there, he is in danger." Without a single second of hesitation, she marched into the kitchen and grabbed a heavy iron skillet. She ran out onto the porch, her eyes blazing with the fury of a mother ready to protect her own. "I'm going to the river," she yelled to the crowd. "Who is coming with me to save my family?" The neighbors hesitated, but then old Jack stepped forward, holding a heavy iron shovel. He reminded everyone that a couple of local kids from the next town over had gone missing recently. The thought of real criminals operating in their backyard drove the crowd into a wild frenzy. The fishermen grabbed their clubs, the farmers lifted their heavy tools, and a mob was formed. They marched down the dark road, a roaring crowd rushing toward the riverbank right behind Chloe. Back at the muddy edge of the water, Ethan was losing his battle, covered in deep cuts and blood. He was pinned to the ground, but he still used his last bit of strength to wrap his arms around the lead thug's leg. He held on like a vice, his teeth gritted, ignoring the heavy blows raining down on his face. "Run, Mia. Run as fast as you can." Ethan screamed at the top of his lungs, his voice choked with blood, but the psychotic criminal managed to shake him off. Lunging forward and grabbing Mia by her jacket, he dragged her toward the rushing, freezing current of the river, laughing like an absolute demon. "If I can't sell her, I'll just drop her in the deep end," the thug screamed, raising her over the water. Right at that final, terrifying second, a loud roar tore through the dark woods surrounding the river. Chloe burst through the trees, flanked by 30 angry fishermen holding torches and shovels. "Get your filthy hands off my daughter," Chloe screamed, lunging forward like a wild animal. Seeing a massive, angry mob of locals charging down the hill, the thugs completely lost their cool. The tough guy act dissolved into pure panic as the crowd swarmed over the riverbank. The fishermen didn't ask questions. They immediately tackled the criminals to the ground. They rained down heavy blows, beating the thugs into the mud and pinning them down effortlessly. Old Jack stepped forward, grabbing the leader by his hair and ripping the black mask off his face. When the mask came off, the shocking truth was finally revealed to the entire community. These weren't random professional human traffickers from the big city at all. They were just local bookies and low-level enforcers named Leo and Clyde. They ran the illegal gambling rings down on the south side of town, and everyone knew them. After a rough, painful taste of neighborhood justice, the cowards dropped to their knees, weeping. They held their hands up, begging for mercy as the angry crowd surrounded them with shovels. "Don't kill us. We were just following orders," Leo sobbed, wiping the blood from his nose. They immediately sold out the wealthy mastermind, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. They confessed that the entire kidnapping was orchestrated by a corrupt local mobster named Ryan. Ryan was business partners with Victor, and they wanted to destroy Ethan's life completely. The plan was to make it look like Ethan sold his own kid, destroying his reputation forever. Once his name was ruined, Victor could easily step in, take Chloe away, and claim the pier. With the massive misunderstanding finally cleared up, the neighbors turned to look at Ethan. Their eyes were filled with profound respect, seeing him bleeding in the mud to protect his little girl. They realized he wasn't the monster they thought he was. He was a real stand-up, honorable man. Chloe dropped her weapon, rushing into the mud and pulling Ethan and Mia into her arms. They held each other tightly as the rain began to pour, their tears mixing with the fresh water. After surviving that terrifying brush with death, Ethan became an unbreakable shield for his family. He spent every single moment of his days ensuring that no one could ever threaten them again. A few days later, a group of older, mean kids from the school intentionally pushed Mia down in the dirt. They laughed at her, pointing fingers and calling her a dirty gambler's white trash kid. Before Mia could even start crying, a shadow fell over the playground like a descending storm. Ethan showed up like an absolute warrior, his towering figure blocking out the afternoon sun. He let out a deep, booming roar that echoed across the entire park, sending the bullies running in terror. He didn't care about looking foolish. He knelt straight down into the dirt right in front of his daughter. He gently wiped the dust from her knees, pulling her into a warm, safe, and protective embrace. "Daddy's here now, sweetheart," he whispered softly into her hair, his voice steady and true. "I promise you, as long as I draw breath, nobody is ever going to hurt you guys again." The former gambler had finally won back his family's happiness, putting his life on the line to do it. But the shadows of the past still lingered in the deep corners of his troubled mind. In another sudden, painful flash of memory, he saw the dark days of his old life vividly. He remembered being stuck in the mud of his own addiction, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He had lost absolutely literally everything at the underground table, down to his last dollar and his watch. A pack of dangerous armed criminals had surrounded him in the back room like a pack of starving wolves. The lead bookies had smiled dirtily, grabbing Ethan by his jaw and forcing him to look at a contract. They had demanded he sign over the deed to his house and give up his wife as collateral for a loan, all for a measly $200 just so he could stay in the game and try to win it back. Trembling with fear and withdrawal, his dignity completely stripped away, he had made the deal. He had pressed his ink-stained thumbprint onto the dirty piece of paper, sealing their fate. That night's ultimate shame was a ticking time bomb that he couldn't stop. It was that exact contract that led to the thugs coming to his house, sparking the massive fire. The blaze had burned his entire life to ashes, leaving him with nothing but a broken soul. His wife and daughter had died in that horrific, screaming inferno, leaving a permanent scar. The scene shifts abruptly to a desolate, abandoned industrial field on the outskirts of Seattle. The wind was blowing dust through the rusted skeletons of old factories, the sky a dark gray. The once pathetic, trembling gambler was gone, replaced by a man who looked stone cold. Ethan stood tall and unyielding over two men who were kneeling bound in the cold dirt. It was Leo and Clyde, the two thugs who had tried to hurt his daughter down by the riverbank. Ethan held a heavy glass bottle of raw liquor. By the muddy banks of the Mississippi, the late afternoon sun painted the sky in deep shades of amber and crimson. The water was high that day, rushing and slamming against the wooden pilings of the old pier. Cole stood right at the edge, the fierce wind whipping through his worn denim jacket. Sarah was right beside him, her eyes reflecting the warm, fading light of the sunset. They were young, breathless, and completely broke, but they had a fire in their bellies that nothing could put out. Together, facing the roaring current, they screamed their vows into the open air, promising to stick together until the day they died. It was 1995, a simpler time in this small river town, a place where a man's word actually meant something. Cole pulled Sarah close against his chest, feeling the steady beat of her heart. With his other arm, he lifted their oldest daughter, Vicky, a beautiful, innocent little girl, with twin pigtails shaking in the wind. He looked at his wife and his child, and he made a deep, quiet vow from the bottom of his soul. Rich or poor, through thick and thin, I am going to give you two the life you deserve. I will build us a real home, no matter what it takes. In that exact moment, the noise of the world faded away, and they were completely wrapped in pure, unfiltered happiness. Then, the scene shifted back to the dusty yard of their small house, bringing a rare moment of peace to the neighborhood. Dan, a hard-nosed fisherman from down the road, came walking through the gate looking completely humbled. He was dragging his teenage son by the shoulder, making sure the boy kept his head down and his mouth shut. They walked right up to Cole's porch, standing there in the dirt to offer a real formal apology. Dan didn't pull any punches with his own blood. He looked his boy dead in the eye and warned him never to lay a finger on Vicky or Valerie again. If I catch you bullying Cole's girls one more time, I'll personally throw you in the river, Dan barked. Then, reaching into his heavy coat pocket, Dan pulled out a large, crinkling bag of hard candy wrapped in bright red paper, handing it over as a genuine peace offering for the children. He looked at Cole, his expression softening with deep respect, and admitted what everyone in the county was starting to realize. Cole is the sharpest man we've got around here, Dan said out loud. He's the only one with the guts to put this town on the map. Sarah, who always preferred grace over a grudge, smiled gently and stepped down from the porch. She didn't want the boy to leave with a bitter taste in his mouth, so she reached into her apron and handed him some fresh homemade biscuits. Moved by her kindness, Dan's son looked up, his face turning bright red as he looked Vicky in the eye. "I'm really sorry, Vicky," he muttered, completely sincere. "I won't ever bother you again." With those simple words, the old neighborhood feud evaporated, leaving nothing but clean air and mutual respect between the two houses. As Cole stood there, watching little Vicky chase her sister around the yard, the world around him seemed to slow down to a crawl. The laughter of his child faded, and a powerful, vivid vision flashed right across his eyes. He didn't see the little girl in pigtails anymore. Instead, he saw a vision of Vicky 20 years into the future. She was a grown woman, fierce and brilliant, standing tall in a sharp, pristine white power suit in a high-rise boardroom, commanding the respect of the entire business world. The vision was so real, so breathtaking, that it made his chest tighten with overwhelming pride. He snapped back to reality, his knees hitting the dusty ground, and he looked at his little girl with tears welling up in his eyes. He reached out, his hands trembling slightly, and gently took her tiny, delicate hands in his own. "Vicky, baby, look at me," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You don't hate your old man anymore, do you? Little Vicky just stared back at him, her eyes wide and curious, unable to comprehend the deep lines of hardship and wisdom on her father's face. To her, he was just daddy, the center of her universe. Cole took a long, ragged breath, swallowing the pain of the past, and forced a bright, confident smile across his face. Listen to me, sweetheart, he promised, kissing her forehead. Our tomorrow is going to be brighter than anything you can imagine. But the quiet peace of the afternoon didn't last long. The next morning, Cole and Sarah walked down to the bustling local fish market, the air thick with the smell of saltwater, ice, and raw ambition. As they navigated through the crowded wooden stalls, they ran smack into Frank, who was standing in the center of the boardwalk. Frank was dressed up in a flashy, expensive corporate suit, looking down his nose at every working man who passed him by. The moment his eyes landed on Cole, a nasty, crooked grin spread across his face, and his eyes locked onto the jagged pink scar running along Cole's forehead. He stepped right into their path, opening his mouth to spew venom. "Well, look what the river dragged in," Frank sneered, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "A pathetic, broke gambler who can't even pay his own rent. What makes you think a piece of trash like you belongs at a high-stakes county auction?" Cole stopped dead in his tracks, his body going completely still. He didn't flinch, and he didn't look away, he just stared back with ice in his veins. "This auction wasn't set up for the county, Frank," Cole said, his voice deadly calm. "Mr. Nielsen set this entire meeting up specifically for me." Frank threw his head back and laughed, a loud, ugly sound that echoed off the metal roofs. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a massive, thick stack of $100 bills, snapping the crisp paper loudly right in front of Cole's nose. "You are living in a fantasy world, loser," Frank shouted, waving the greenbacks wildly. "I am putting down $5,000 in cold, hard cash today on behalf of the biggest investment firm in the county. What do you have in your pockets, Cole? Dirt and regret." The greedy market vendors, seeing the massive pile of money in Frank's hands, instantly turned their backs on Cole, eager to please the richest man in the room. They started whispering loudly, tossing insults at Sarah, telling her she better get her stupid husband in line before they both got ruined. "Be smart, girl," one old fishmonger yelled from behind his counter. "Tell your man to drop to his knees and beg Mr. Frank for forgiveness." Frank saw that Cole wasn't begging, and it drove his arrogance through the roof. He stepped even closer, his breathing heavy, his words turning vile and cheap. "You are nothing but a worthless, deadbeat daddy, Cole," Frank hissed, looking over at Sarah, "an incompetent clown who keeps his beautiful wife living in a shack." Then, with a disgusting, greasy smile, Frank reached his dirty hand out, fully intending to grab Sarah right by her chin in front of the whole town. "Why don't you leave this loser and come home with a real man, Sarah?" he whispered loudly. The exact microsecond Frank's fingers brushed against Sarah's skin, the air in the market turned to absolute ice. Cole's eyes snapped shut and open, a terrifying darkness taking over his face. With the speed of a striking copperhead, his hand shot out, locking onto Frank's wrist with a bone-crushing, metal grip. Frank gasped, the color instantly draining from his face as the bones in his wrist creaked. But he was too proud to back down, so he glared through his teeth and dared him. "Go ahead, boy, hit me. I dare you to touch an executive." Before the final word could even leave Frank's lips, Cole twisted his hips, put his entire body weight into his shoulder, and delivered a ferocious, earth-shattering backhand slap across Frank's face. The impact sounded like a shotgun blast echoing through the market stalls. The force of the blow lifted Frank clean off his expensive leather shoes, sending him spinning through the air until he crashed face first into a massive, rusted metal tub filled to the brim with slimy, dead catfish. Cole didn't even look out of breath. He just calmly wiped his palms on his jeans, stepped up to the edge of the tub, and looked down at the ruined businessman. "You all heard him clear as day," Cole announced to the stunned crowd. "The man literally begged me to hit him." Frank was a complete pathetic mess, covered from head to toe in fish slime and blood. He scrambled wildly out of the tub, his expensive suit completely destroyed, clutching his rapidly swelling jaw and screaming like a wounded animal. He assaulted an official county investor. Frank shrieked, pointing a shaking finger. "He's a criminal. Lock him up, break his legs." The vendors, still terrified of losing Frank's promised money, started shouting at Sarah, claiming her family's reckless behavior had just ruined the entire town's economy. "You are done in this county," an old woman screamed, shaking her fist at them. "You'll never sell a single fish in this market as long as you live." Frank wiped the blood from his mouth, a sick, satisfied grin returning to his face, absolutely certain that his financial power would crush Cole into the dirt. But Cole didn't even blink. His face remained an absolute mask of stone. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up and unzipped his heavy denim jacket. He reached deep into his inside hidden pocket, slid his hand out, and pulled out a massive bound brick of $100 bills wrapped in heavy rubber bands. The sheer thickness of the stack made the closest vendors draw in a sharp, collective gasp. The entire market went dead silent, the only sound being the flies buzzing over the fish. Cole raised the $10,000 high above his head, letting the sun catch the cash, shattering Frank's fragile ego into a million pieces with a single look. "You think 5 grand makes you a big shot around here, Frank," Cole roared. "That's pocket change where I come from. I'm putting down $10,000 of my own cash today, and I am buying this entire damn market." While the crowd stood there, completely paralyzed by the sight of that raw wealth, the heavy wooden doors at the back of the market were slammed open. Sarah's parents, Sam and Judy, came bursting through the press of people, looking furious. Judy didn't bother to ask what happened or look at the money in Cole's hand. She just marched straight up, pointing her crooked finger directly into Cole's nose, screaming at the top of her lungs that he was nothing but a violent, abusive lowlife. Sam stepped up right beside her, his face dark as a thundercloud, and slammed a thick manila folder down onto a nearby wooden fish crate. Inside was a fully prepared set of divorce papers and a black ink pad for thumbprints. He grabbed Sarah roughly by her arm, trying to force her fingers onto the ink, sign the papers. "Girl, you are leaving this deadbeat right now," Sam ordered. "You are not going to ruin our family name for a degenerate gambler." Sarah's eyes filled with hot, angry tears as she yanked her arm back with all her might. "Stop it, both of you, just stop," she screamed, her voice cracking with emotion. "Cole didn't touch me. He has never laid a hand on me in his entire life. Look at my forehead. Look at this bruise. Frank brought 3 hired thugs to our house 2 nights ago to force me into a marriage. Cole took a beating to protect me from them. He saved my life, but her parents were so blinded by their decades of hatred and prejudice that they didn't hear a single word of truth coming out of their daughter's mouth." Judy fell to her knees right there on the dirty wooden floor, throwing a massive, dramatic fit, slapping her thighs and wailing to the sky like a professional mourner. "She's brainwashed," Judy howled, tears streaming down her makeup. "I carried her for 9 months, raised her for 20 years, and now she throws her own mother under the bus for a worthless criminal." Seeing his in-laws turn on Cole with such blind, vicious hatred, Frank stood up a little straighter, smugly brushing the fish scales off his ruined jacket. Sam looked over at Frank, completely convinced that a wealthy man of his stature could never commit a crime like home invasion or kidnapping. "Mr. Frank is a respectable businessman," Sam declared, glaring at his daughter. "He wouldn't look twice at a girl from a shack unless he was trying to help us." Right at that exact high-stakes second, when everything seemed entirely lost, Joe, a respected gray-haired elder who had run the docks for 40 years, stepped out from the back of the crowd, his face set in a hard line of righteous anger. He marched right past Sam and stood directly between Frank and Cole, pointing a thick, calloused finger straight into Frank's lying face. "Don't you dare listen to another word coming out of this snake's mouth," Joe roared to the crowd. "The criminal gang that used to run protection rackets on our fishermen, the ones who beat up our boys and stole our catches last winter. Cole went down to their warehouse alone and ran every single one of them out of this county. And that's not all. Mr. Nielsen didn't invest in Frank, he invested in Cole. Cole is the one who's about to bring real corporate jobs to this entire valley." Frank's face went completely white, his knees trembling under his tailored trousers. Joe turned around around, grabbing Sam by his coat collar to force him to listen. "I saw the bank deeds with my own 2 eyes, you stubborn old fool," Joe shouted. Cole didn't lose his money, he just bought 20 acres of prime land on the ridge. He's already hired the contractors to build Sarah a beautiful 3-story estate. With that final undeniable piece of truth hanging in the air, the lies completely dissolved. The greedy parents and the sniveling Frank stood there frozen, as the entire town turned on them with looks of absolute disgust and mockery. The scene shifted deeper into the heart of the quiet, isolated riverside town, where a dark, dangerous game of power and survival was reaching its boiling point. Frank, who had spent months building up his fake identity as a big city tycoon, had been using his deep pockets to buy off the local town officials, focusing all his cruel energy on breaking Cole's spirit and tearing his marriage apart. He went around the town squares, branding Cole as a dangerous, unstable addict, and he had even managed to manipulate the town's trusted physician, Dr. Heiress. Using the doctor's sterling reputation as a shield, Frank had gathered the community together, fully intending to publicly humiliate Cole and brand him a criminal in front of everyone. But Cole wasn't the kind of man to play political games or beg for mercy. He knew the only way to beat a liar was to strike hard, fast, and out in the open. In front of the entire gathering, Cole reached into his pocket and threw the brick of cash down, demanding that the town elders verify every single dollar right then and there. Faced with the undeniable cold reality of the money, Frank's entire story crumbled into dust. Losing his mind with embarrassment and rage, Frank dropped the gentleman act entirely, barking orders to his personal security guards to draw their weapons and eliminate Cole. But Cole was faster. He stepped inside the guard's reach, broke his arm with a single twist, and slammed Frank face first into the dirt, pinning him down with a heavy boot on his neck. The expensive suit, the high-class accent, the brilliant business reputation, every single bit of Frank's carefully crafted mask was shattered into bloody pieces on the ground. Yet, a cornered rat doesn't stop biting just because it's pinned down. Before Cole could call the local sheriff, Frank's main associate, manager Casey, came sprinting into the town square with a fresh group of hired thugs from the city. Among them was an old enemy Cole thought he had gotten rid of months ago, a ruthless, violent street enforcer who knew every dirty trick in the book. They surrounded the square, screaming fake charges, trying to convince the frightened townspeople that Cole had stolen the $10,000 from a corporate vault in the city. They tried to confuse the crowd with a non-stop barrage of legal threats and lies, hoping the locals would turn on Cole out of sheer fear of the big city lawyers. But the people of this river town weren't stupid anymore. They had seen Cole's blood on the gravel. They stood their ground, refusing to move, their eyes locked onto the villains. Under the crushing weight of the town's collective glare, the hired enforcer's nerve broke completely. He dropped his weapon, fell to his knees, and confessed everything to the crowd, admitting that Frank had paid him $500 to frame Cole for the robbery. Dr. Heiress, standing at the edge of the porch, felt a deep wave of shame wash over him. Looking at the bruised faces and the raw cash, he finally saw the truth clear as day. He realized he had allowed his own prestige to be used by a literal monster to destroy an innocent man. The very trap Frank had spent weeks setting up to permanently ruin Cole's life had snapped shut on his own neck, leaving him completely exposed and ruined. This wasn't just a simple dispute over land or money anymore. It had become a brutal, raw exposure of human greed versus quiet integrity. When the dust finally settled in the town square, the truth stood tall and unshakable, and Frank was left kneeling in the mud, a pathetic, broken fraud exposed to the world. Now, the tension in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Frank was standing in the center of the town square, surrounded by an angry wall of locals. The hired thug, trying to save his own skin, had turned completely against his boss, holding manager Casey by the shirt collar and screaming out the dirty details of their plans. He looked at the crowd and tried to flip the script one last time to save himself, claiming Cole was still a degenerate gambler who owed thousands to city sharks. He pointed at Sarah, shouting vile, disgusting slurs about her virtue to distract the men, and claimed Casey had stolen $5,000 from the county treasury just to hire Cole and his wife to pull off a massive insurance scam. Under the terrifying pressure of the thug's knife at his throat, poor Casey lost his nerve, nodding his head frantically and crying out that the fake story was true. In a single horrifying instant, the crowd wavered, and Cole became public enemy #1 again. To make an already disgusting situation absolute hell, Sarah's parents chose that exact moment to turn their backs on their own flesh and blood without a single shred of hesitation. Judy, her face twisted into a mask of pure greed and snobbery, started dropping the names of high-ranking politicians she claimed to know in the city. She looked at her daughter with utter contempt, spitting on the ground near her feet. "You married a broke $0 loser who couldn't even pay a decent dowry," she screamed. "He's an anchor dragging this entire family down into the mud. Divorce him today." Sam was even more vicious, stepping forward with his fist clenched tightly, threatening to strip her of her family name and leave her with absolutely nothing. But Sarah possessed a spine made of solid, unyielding American steel. Faced with the terrifying rage of her parents and the whispers of her neighbors, she took a step forward, held her head high, and told them all to go straight to hell. Sam, completely unaccustomed to his daughter showing any form of defiance, lost his mind with old-school patriarchal rage and raised his heavy hand to strike her face. But before his palm could even move an inch through the air, Cole appeared like a shadow. His hand clamped around Sam's wrist like a pressurized steel vice, stopping him dead. Cole looked his father-in-law in the eye, his voice vibrating with a terrifying power. "She is my wife," Cole whispered, his grip tightening until Sam whimpered. "And nobody in this world lays a finger on her ever again." Realizing that physical violence wasn't going to work against a man like Cole, Sam instantly dropped to the gravel road, putting on a pathetic, theatrical performance. He started rolling around in the dirt, clutching his arm and wailing that his son-in-law was killing him. Judy joined right in, screaming like a banshee, trying to incite a riot among the townspeople. "He is killing an old man," she shrieked. "Get the ropes. Lynch him." Frank, seeing the absolute chaos unfolding, decided to use his wealth to end the game. He reached into his leather briefcase, pulled out a massive handful of $100 bills, and threw them into the air, letting the cash scatter across the gravel road. $200 cash to any man who tackles Cole and straps his wife to a chair, Frank roared. Looking at the desperate poor fishermen around them starting to step forward for the money, Sarah lost her nerve for the first time, her hands shaking as she tried to pull Cole toward the alley. But right at that hopeless, terrifying second, the loud, unmistakable roar of a powerful engine echoed. A long black custom luxury town car tore through the square, slamming its brakes near the crowd. The heavy doors flew open, and Mr. Nielsen, the true billionaire ruler of the state's shipping industry, stepped out onto the gravel, flanked by 4 massive, armed security executives. Judy, thinking her wealthy savior had finally arrived to crush Cole once and for all, came running over on her hands and knees, wiping her fake tears on Mr. Nielsen's leather shoes. She started rambling incoherently, begging him to use his power to put Cole in prison forever. But the universe was about to deliver the most beautiful, brutal payback this town had ever seen. Mr. Nielsen didn't even look down at her. He just listened to her toxic lies for 3 seconds. Then, without warning, he spun around and delivered a devastating slap across Judy's face, the sound of the impact echoing off the brick buildings like a thunderclap. "You are a disgusting excuse for a mother," Mr. Nielsen barked, his voice filled with pure fury. Then, he stepped forward and kicked Sam right in his ribs, sending the old man rolling through the dirt like a broken toy. Mr. Nielsen turned to the stunned crowd, his voice booming with absolute authority. "Cole and Sarah are the most honest, hardworking people in this entire state," he announced. "They are the sole reason I am investing millions of dollars into this town's infrastructure." Seeing his entire financial empire crumble in a single afternoon, Frank stepped forward, desperate. "You can't do this, Nielsen," Frank screamed, his voice cracking. "I have the contracts." But Cole stepped forward, pulling a thick official federal dossier out from under his jacket, throwing the documents directly into Frank's face, exposing his true identity to the world. "Your name isn't Frank Vance, and you don't own a single shipping line in the city," Cole revealed. "Your real name is a fugitive warrant out of the state of Louisiana. You run a brutal underground human trafficking ring that targets young girls in poor river towns." Mr. Nielsen, whose own sister had been lost to a similar crime decades ago, went deathly cold. He looked at his security detail and gave a single quiet nod of his head. "Take this piece of trash apart," Mr. Nielsen whispered. The four massive guards moved like professionals, tackling Frank into the gravel and breaking his nose. But a monster who has survived in the shadows for years doesn't give up until his heart stops beating. Pinned face first into the dirt, Frank spit out a mouthful of blood and gravel, laughing hysterically. He managed to slide a hand into his pocket and pull out a crinkled, blood-stained piece of paper. "It doesn't matter what you think of me," Frank screamed, waving the paper at the crowd. "I hold a legal signed debt note from Cole's old gambling days in the city." He signed his own wife over to the casino syndicate as collateral for a $10,000 debt. The crowd gasped, the horror of the accusation hanging heavy in the hot afternoon air. And then, the ultimate betrayal occurred. Judy stood up, wiping the blood from her lip, and looked the town elders dead in the eye, ready to commit perjury against her own daughter. "It's true," Judy lied, her voice dripping with pure malice. "I saw him sign it with my own eyes. I was at that casino in the city, and I saw Cole trade my daughter away to pay off his debts." Faced with the ultimate poisonous lie from his own family, Cole didn't bother to argue or scream. He didn't look at the angry crowd, and he didn't look at the federal agents arriving down the road. Slowly, calmly, he turned his entire body away from the world and looked down at Sarah. His eyes were incredibly soft, filled with a deep, unshakable devotion that nothing could break. "Sarah, look at me," he whispered gently, taking her trembling hands in his own. "Do you believe me, honey? Do you trust your man?" In that beautiful, quiet microsecond, the entire world around Sarah faded into absolute silence. Her mind flashed back to that windy afternoon by the roaring Mississippi River in 1995. She remembered the exact tone of his voice when he promised to stand between her and the storm. She knew in her heart that even if the entire world turned to ash, Cole would die before he hurt her. She looked into his eyes, smiled through her tears, and squeezed his hands with all her might. "With my whole life," she whispered, "I trust you." The town square was completely silent now, the air cold as ice as the final reckoning arrived. Frank was pinned down in the center of the gravel road, his expensive suit torn to ribbons, his true, vile nature completely laid bare for every single neighbor to see with their own eyes. Sam stood over him now, his old face twisted with a mixture of horror and deep burning rage, finally realizing that the man he had tried to force his daughter to marry was a literal monster. "You are a human trafficker," Sam whispered, his voice shaking with a terrible anger. "You tried to steal my grandbabies." Cole stood right beside him, his shirt torn open, revealing 3 deep, jagged silver scars along his ribs, the permanent marks from the knives he had taken to protect his family. Seeing those scars, the townspeople finally understood the immense sacrifice Cole had made. Frank looked up through the blood running into his eyes, still trying to mock them with a sneer. "You don't have a single piece of legal evidence that will stick in a federal court," he spat. But before he could finish his boast, Sam turned his burning rage directly toward his own wife. He reached down, grabbed Judy by her coat, and dragged her into the center of the square, exposing the final, darkest secret that had destroyed their family from the inside out. "You took $800 from this monster 2 weeks ago, didn't you, Judy?" Sam roared. "You knew exactly what he was, and you sold our own daughter out for a handful of cash." Judy collapsed onto the gravel, her face pale as a ghost, weeping and begging for forgiveness. But Sam's heart had turned to absolute stone. He looked at her with nothing but pure disgust. "Get down on your knees and beg your daughter for mercy," Sam ordered, his voice breaking. "Because as of this day, you are no longer a wife and you are dead to this family forever." Right then, the final nail was driven into Frank's coffin. Cole stepped forward, looking down at the broken criminal with a cold, satisfied smile. "Your boys at the city casino, Tommy and Paul," Cole said, his voice echoing in the quiet square. "The federal marshals picked them up at the border 3 hours ago. They sang like birds, Frank. They gave up the locations, the ledger, and your real name." Frank's jaw dropped, his last bit of hope evaporating into the cold air. He tried to scream out the name of Chief Hudson, the corrupt county official he had been bribing, fully believing his high-level political protection would save him at the last second. But the heavy doors of the courthouse opened, and Chief Hudson walked out into the sunlight, surrounded by a dozen federal agents with their weapons drawn, his face dark as night. Chief Hudson marched straight up to Frank, looking down at him with utter hatred. "You lied to me, Frank," the chief said, spitting on the ground near his head. "You told me this was a legitimate land acquisition, you piece of garbage." With a single wave of his hand, the federal marshals slammed Frank's face into the dirt, ratcheting the heavy steel handcuffs tightly around his wrists until he screamed in pain. All the power, all the millions, all the terrifying arrogance gone in a single afternoon. Cole stepped up, placed his heavy work boot directly onto Frank's neck, and pressed down, forcing the monster to taste the dirt of the town he had tried to destroy. As the police cruisers drove away, their sirens fading into the distance, the quiet river town finally breathed a sigh of relief, welcoming a peace it hadn't known in years. The years rolled by like the steady, unyielding current of the Mississippi River. The struggles of 1995 faded into local history, and the world moved forward into 2018. Cole was no longer the fierce young warrior who had ruled the town square with his fists. He was an old man now, his body broken by decades of hard work and the heavy toll of his old wounds. He lay in a quiet hospital bed, the steady rhythmic beep of the heart monitor filling the room. Plastic oxygen tubes ran into his nose, his breathing shallow and weak. Sarah sat right beside him, her hair completely silver now, her hands lined with the marks of time. Vicky and Valerie stood at the foot of the bed, beautiful grown women with tears in their eyes. Cole slowly, with immense effort, raised his trembling, wrinkled hand from the white sheet. Sarah reached out, wrapping her warm, gentle fingers around his, locking them tightly together. He looked at his wife, his eyes still holding that same deep, beautiful fire from 20 years ago. In a voice that was barely a whisper, but completely steady, he shared his very last wish. "Take me back to the riverbank, Sarah," he whispered, a sweet smile touching his lips. "Just one more time, where it all began." And there, in the quiet warmth of the afternoon room, their lifetime of love finally found its rest.